Check one. Here.
All set. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Bukowski, if you can lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, please remain standing for a moment of silence for our veterans. And for the invocation, we have Reverend Rick Maisano. Good evening.
Good evening. As we stand before you tonight, Lord, we want to thank you for our great country. We thank you, Father God, that we believe in you. And Lord God, that as we do business here tonight, it'll be orderly, without malice, and Father God, peaceful. We pray, Father God, for the up-and-coming election, 2 weeks. Lord, we know this country is divided. We're asking for unity in this nation. We're also praying, Father God, for as we also on the 11th celebrate our veterans and what they've done for us, what they've won for this country, the freedoms that we enjoy today. We ask your presence here, your blessing, the blessing upon each and every one here. And Lord, those who couldn't make it because of illness, we ask, Father, your healing touch upon them. We ask it in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Barbara Bukowski. Here. Michael Jazinski.
Here.
Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky. Councilmember Brian Pilarski.
Present.
Councilmember Vernon Thompson.
Here.
Supervisor Brian Nowak. All are present today.
First speaker is Don Kalipski. Good evening.
Hi guys, okay, I'm here to speak a couple of things, I'll make it really quick. The beginning resolutions of the, meeting and the televising, I don't understand how those, from 2000 and I don't know when they were, 2019. Those aren't change orders, those are new orders. I don't think OSC would be happy with that. And the other thing I have to speak about, is, this is the most important one, it's Indian Road project. I have petitions here, I will give them to you, whoever wants them. The residents of Raleigh Hollow, Deer Trail, Indian Road, Raleigh Road, we're not happy about that. I have 28 people from Raleigh Hollow, our property's back right out to the creek. And then I have other people, I have 25 that I got signatures from other neighbors in our neighborhood. We do not want a solar farm behind our houses. We are not happy with what could happen. There has been an eagle sighted behind our houses flying along the creek. There is a beaver that I've seen personally behind my house. You got woodpeckers, possums, raccoons, deer, rabbits, redfox, gray fox, owls, hawks. We have all kinds of habitat. Where do you think that's going to go? It's going to come in. I mean, I've had a coyote walk down the sidewalk in front of my house on more than one occasion. Where are these things going to go? Solar panels are ugly, and it will probably reduce the value of our homes, because who's gonna pull on our street and say, oh boy, I get to live next to a solar farm instead of a green space? Yes, we live in the toxic triangle, this is not a good look. We don't wanna be stuck with this, for better word, crap in our backyards, and that's what you're doing to us, by trying to put this in our backyard. It's not right, and the residents are not happy, so.
Feel free to approach the podium and we can.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker up is Michael Binkowski. Good evening, sir.
I was a teacher at Central for 36 years. I'm the Valley Hollow and David Hampton was in 1977. Behind my backyard was absolutely just beautiful trees. I'm here because I'm very skeptical about the solar farm. I observed raw garbage dumped in that landfill floating down the street. Like collecting 1,500 signatures, closed the dump. I won. Then they put in a transfer station. And I fought again because we were taking hammers and Williamsville's garbage. My life was threatened. I had a bullet shot through the back of my home. I was told, you do not know what you're dealing with. I have a council member's voice and name on tape threatening my life. It's in my safe deposit box. He's no longer on this council. Tell me why I shouldn't be skeptical about finally stopping that thing and something new coming in. What if new technology comes? I'm using my common sense. If new technology comes in, which deals with collection of light, sound, buzzing noises, where does that leave us? I suggest and I hope that you deny the site for the solar panel. Thank you for your consideration.
Our next speaker signed up is Stephen Nowicki.
Stephen Nowicki. On all the infrastructure resolutions, tables or otherwise, it's depressing we need to do this meeting after meeting. Let's stop wasting the town's time on installing infrastructure improvements in our town. You're all paid to make the town operate, and we are tired of not seeing our town improved over political grandstanding. 652, the Indian Solar Project, our electrical infrastructure in the country needs all the help it can get. Having a decentralized power grid ensures our nation's energy production is protected without reliance on any fuels or outside resources for years after its installation. I've also worked on many projects, if anyone has questions about those. 665, the supervisory agreement with the town. This is a fair and equitable agreement for the workers of our town. I expect anyone who has an understanding of this industry to see that these proposed wages and benefits are on par with the industry standards. I see no reason for pushback. These are hardworking men and women who deserve fair conditions, and our town bears that responsibility to provide such for them. 666, the domestic violence awareness. I'm happy to see the town is recognizing the issue of domestic violence and provide resources to assist those who have been abused. Incidents often occur behind closed doors where most will be none the wiser as to be a victim or even an abuser. Either side could be sitting with us in the room today and may not even know. Thank you again to the board for recognizing that it is a human right to not be a victim of domestic abuse. 632, Conservation Advisory Council. So let's get the story straight. These are unpaid volunteer positions for the betterment of the town. This was tabled at the last meeting after concerns there may not have been any announcement for the position's availability. These positions have been publicly announced multiple times so that anyone interested may express their willingness to join the council or attend the meetings. That was told to this council by the head of the Conservation Advisory Council himself. Not only have there been no newcomers to these meetings since I've been coming, but to my knowledge, there have been no others who have contacted the town with a willingness to join. All reasonable criteria have been met to allow these appointments to be made. Not only that, but there is still the ability to appoint people to this board in the future if the town council sees fit. There's no good reason to hold back this resolution other than to hold back the progress of the town. Now, I understand why the resolution was held back. My name's on here, you don't like me, Mike. Fair enough. But we could take a less myopic view and see that you're holding back 3 other people from appointments as well. Neither Carol, Sandy, Robert, nor Joseph have done anything just like you, yet you are impeding their volunteer efforts for the town as well. I expect this resolution to be passed and an apology from you, not to me, but to those other council appointees who have nothing to do with our forums. The town pays you to do a job, and I expect it to be done.
Our next speaker is Diane Benchkowski.
I'll start backwards and forward. I did want to talk about the resolution 665 of TCSU. From random understanding, it's basically a settlement agreement to send for collective bargaining contract. I do want to mention though that this contract that they currently have in place does not end until the end of this year of 2024. However, the TCEA contract, these are the people that are doing the daily operations and the day-to-day work. They don't have any contract. So why don't you spend your time on trying to settle that contract first? Those are the people that are waiting for their wage increases, with the way the inflation has increased and the prices of food alone. Some of those new employees can't afford to even pay their rent or buy groceries. So for me, I think you should reconsider and try settling the TCEA contract. This can be put on hold. Also, I'm not sure what Stephen Whitney is talking about. This is with their contract, because on the last page, section 305 job security, it's mentioned specifically to protect the principal engineer assistant, general foreman, for the highway department. That is a non-negotiable item. You don't have to negotiate that. There are certain things through code that have to be negotiated, like sick time, vacation, wages. This type of job security for one person, no. The other part, Article 17, workforce changes. Did everybody read this? It's so bizarre to me. This is another one. The town and TCSU agree that for the life of this agreement, the principal engineering assistant general foreman and the highway department general foreman will be charged with all the duties and responsibilities associated with that position of deputy highway superintendent. Now, I would say no to that. There's no guarantee to figure out a way for, I mean, no, I'm work on Mr. Pitts. He wanted to do away with it. So why would you even consider this paragraph? It's just beyond it. I just want to move on to the solar project. To me, is a no-go for Indian Road. I have done a lot of canvassing door to door over the years, talking to those residents, and this was about 10, 12 years ago already. And there were a lot of cases of childhood cancer, whether it was brain cancer, throat cancer. I've had 2 young kids or adolescents come to the door with cancer. So there's something going on with that one. And anything else, spend your time on trying to figure out, first of all, is that landfill correctly capped? And there's no leakage, or you decide to put a solar farm on that landfill.
That is currently over 3 minutes. Make a motion to extend.
Riser, an extra minute.
Just wanted to mention, there are several resolutions for the lining of our sewers. If you're in place, I was here at the time, yes, as the supervisor. Resolution 648, 49, 50, and then 654 and 655. I really have a problem doing this at this time. Yuba Creek Road was already done by the county. Why are you saying it's going to be done again now? This work was done, and if you look through all the paperwork, yeah, oh, you signed off on all that in 2020 and in 2021. So now, why are we doing these resolutions now? That doesn't make sense. I mean, it's Constituent put their bid in 2019. Just because now it might be a different price doesn't mean we owe them a different price. They bid on it, they're going off that contract. I would not be doing this change order, and I really don't understand why you're doing it now. Maybe it's because you have money. I don't know, but you already signed off on this 20. I think that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. The next speaker is John Norick, and please correct me if I got the last name wrong. At the front? Okay, thank you. Please check if the green light's on and,
Testing.
okay.
Evening.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you pronounce your last name for me again?
Gwork.
Gork?
Yeah, GWOREK.
Oh, it's a W.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
about that.
Floor is yours.
So yeah, I too live on Raleigh Hollow, and I also am against the solar farm. I'm also old enough to remember coming down the street and seeing a big pile of garbage in the background. I don't want to see that again with these solar panels. And apart from the animals being displaced and all that, property values are obviously going to go down. There was let me see here. In September of 2020, the University of Rhode Island released a study and said on these type of landfill solar array things, said homes within a mile depreciate in value about 1.7%, and homes within 0.1 miles equal to about 7%. Apart from that, my biggest thing is the cap on it. I'm worried about when construction begins and maintaining it afterwards, if the weight, pressure, and all that's going to break the cap and release methane gas into the air. And not only that, if it's the pressure from it and the weight as well is going to make runoff with that leachate that goes into the water stream. Another big thing is I don't want to have to front the bill as a taxpayer if there's something that goes into the water or the groundwater. That's not something I want to put the bill with. Other than that, I think I'm good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, with that, that gets to an end of our public comment period. Next on our agenda, we have 3 public hearings this evening. Madam Clerk, can you announce the first?
First public hearing, we had a call for a public hearing that was made at the October 8th, 2024 Town Board meeting. It was Resolution 2024-602 to discuss funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Program for the 2025 program year. My office received no comments in regards to these funds.
Rachel,
Hello,
the floor is yours.
thank you. Kim, do you have the slides? Perfect. This public hearing is to review HUD-funded programs and receive comments on the town of Cheektowaga's use of its annual entitlement allocations, including Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds, and Home Investment Partnership Program funds, or HOME funds. These funds are utilized to benefit residents who are low to moderate income and who reside in the town and villages of Sloan and Depew, west of Transit Road. On an annual basis, the town receives an allocation of grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD funds are extremely beneficial to the town to fund needed community services and accomplish necessary projects that otherwise would have to be funded by the town. The fiscal year to utilize these funds is from April 1st of 2025 through March 31st of 2026. And based on comments received at this public hearing and throughout the 30-day public comment period, the town will create a draft annual action plan to be published on the town's website and at the 2 public libraries in the town clerk's office and in the villages of Depew and Sloan clerk's offices on December 20th, 2024. Citizen comments will then be incorporated into the final submission to HUD. Next slide, please. It's a little hard to read, I apologize. In prior years, the town was awarded the following funding. Utilization of a portion of these funds for our housing rehabilitation program has generated program income through loan payments, which in turn is used to fund additional projects. Program income is also generated from the repayment of loans issued through the Cheektowaga Economic Development Corporation. These funds are reserved to further assist businesses moving into or expanding business in the town of Cheektowaga. Next slide, please. All activities utilizing CDBG funds must meet one of the 3 HUD established national objectives. Prior to committing either CDBG or home funds to any activity, we review submitted proposals for compliance with applicable federal and HUD regulations. Under agreements with the villages of Sloan and Depew, the town receives and administers CDBG grant funds on their behalf, and approximately $137,500 of the annual grant, based on population percentages, goes to the villages for their designated projects. Next slide, please. Next, we will be reviewing our 2023 program year accomplishments. Next slide. Administration costs include staff costs, fringe benefits, supplies and equipment, training, and audit costs associated with planning, oversight, reporting, and implementation of mandated HUD programs. HUD regulations cap these costs at 20% of our annual grant plus 20% of program income received in the prior program year. Next slide, please. Attached are our housing rehabilitation associated activities. $405,463 of CDBG funds, $335,000 of home funds, and $83,000 of New York State Affordable Housing Corporation funds were expended on 33 single and multifamily units throughout our residential rehab program, emergency program, handicap accessibility program, and sump pump assistance program for a total of approximately $823,000. Next slide, please. We continued our acquisition, rehab, new construction program utilizing home investment partnership funds with the assistance of a community housing development organization. As part of this program, we also work with the Buffalo Erie Niagara Land Improvement Corporation, or BENLIC, to acquire vacant parcels and tax foreclosed residential properties. Vacant lots are then utilized for construction of new affordable homes, and residential properties will be rehabilitated. Both will then be sold to income eligible first-time homebuyers. In the 2023 program year, we successfully completed building 2 brand new houses with subsequent sale to income eligible first-time homebuyers. Next slide, please. We have continued our successful partnership with Supportive Services for weatherization services provided to existing low-income owner-occupied and rental housing. 61 units were assisted with this funding in the 2023 program year. Next slide, please. Public services is our next category of activities. Under HUD regulations, public service activities cannot exceed 15% of our annual grant allocation. With that being said, we continue to partner with Belmont Housing Resources for Western New York to provide one-on-one counseling with low-income residents regarding housing issues, credit and financial issues, tenant-landlord issues, fair housing issues, and first-time homebuyer education. In addition, we provided summer day camp financial aid to 14 children, continued funding of the police foot patrol in low-income neighborhoods of the town, contributed funding to not only our senior center program, but the Village of Depew Senior Center programming, and finally contributed funding to a full-time domestic violence advocate housed at the police department to counsel victims and help them develop strategies to protect themselves from their offender. The advocate also assists victims in obtaining safe shelter, long-term counseling, and civil legal assistance. If necessary, the advocate will also accompany the victims to court. Next slide, please. Improvements were made to public facilities and infrastructure in HUD designated low to moderate income neighborhoods in the town of Cheektowaga and village of Sloan. These improvements included storm sewer improvements and sidewalk replacement in the Peachtree neighborhood, with an estimated 650 people benefiting from the project. Lemoyne Avenue curb replacement with an estimated 647 people benefiting from the project. And finally, the village of Sloan executed the replacement of playground equipment at Raisin Park with an estimated 801 people benefiting from the project. Next slide, please. Finally, job creation and retention activities, technical assistance to businesses and micro enterprise assistance were identified as priority needs. The Cheektowaga Economic Development Corporation did not provide any loans in the 2023 program year, nor were any jobs created as a result of prior loans issued. However, they continue to marketing businesses for these loans. Next slide. Finally, if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them. And if anybody has any questions moving forward, you can always email me or call my office.
Yeah, Rachel, I've got one question.
Yes.
And it's related to actually a transfer on the resolutions, but it also pertains to the funding that goes through community development block grant funds. You mentioned the Peachtree sidewalks, and as I understand it, we came in a little under budget based on what we said, right?
Correct.
So we're looking at a budget transfer on tonight's agenda for $45,000, $45,500 and $14,533 and change over to CARES Act Food Pantry and CARES Act Senior Center. Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. You are correct. The sidewalk replacement project came in less than what we originally budgeted. That is all CARES Act funds. And in order to avoid extended periods for substantial amendments, we're reallocating the funds to existing projects. Hence the food pantry assistance and the senior center. The food pantry assistance is for supplies necessary to serve our residents. They've gotten assistance throughout the COVID period. They had some additional needs. They still see an increase in the people that they serve annually, so they requested that. And then the additional amount going to the senior center is to support the full-time outreach worker. Unfortunately, this is probably going to be the last of it because this is the last of the CARES Act money. So we decided to give them a little bit of an additional funding to support that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, are there any other questions from council members? All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Rachel, you and I have had talks about some of the bordering neighborhoods, and I hope that's going to be something we can try and emphasize, next year going forward.
So we just sent out to departments on October 15th funding proposals. We send one to the engineering department and they typically come back with their programs. So this is the time to chat. If you have any needs or concerns on certain neighborhoods that you want to see stuff done, we can definitely talk about it and see how we can fit it in.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All right, with that, we do have a public comment period related to this hearing. We have one person signed up. That'd be Diane Benchkowski. Floor is yours.
Rachel's still here, I assume. Just going to ask a couple things about the plan for next year. The senior services, can you use some of that funding for the Meals on Wheels? I know Amherst is, I'm not sure where, Rachel. So I'm wondering if you could use some of that funding for the Meals on Wheels. I know Carrie likes to, work with them.
So we also send a request for proposals to the senior center, and they submit their needs.
Sorry, Rachel, can you approach the microphone, please?
sorry.
Thank you.
We also send a request for proposal to the senior center, and Carrie sends her wish list to us also. If that's something that she sees a need for. Unfortunately, that does fall under our 15% public service cap. So we are limited and we are at the top of that cap. But if that's something that she sees more useful than something else, then she can definitely ask for that.
Yeah, I noticed that she had asked for more money in the budget. So I was just trying to figure out, where else to find the money.
Mhm.
Also with her outreach coordinator, you were nice enough to find money in the past few years, but it sounds like this year you don't for that service.
Unfortunately, that was COVID money and we are running out of that.
Mhm.
Like I said, we're at the top of our 15% cap for public services. So we don't really have any room to add anything new. But again, if that's something that the need for that is greater than the need for something else,
Mhm.
it's up to her how she wants to allocate what we give her.
Okay. Also, I was listening to the budget workshops the last 2 days last week. And I noticed Crystal Fine had mentioned about the Alexander Community Center flooring and carpeting there. And I know it's a community center and it's definitely within the new map of low to mod. So I'm wondering if you could use some of that funding for the community center flooring and carpeting. It seems like a great need for that. And also the Youth and Rec Special Olympics and Development Disabled Program, but again, it's programming, right?
Well, as far as the Alexander Community Center goes, CDBG funding can't be used on a building for the general conduct of government. We were able to do the elevator because it's an ADA compliant thing, so that's how we were able to fund that. We cannot use money on a government building, unfortunately. HUD does not allow that. So as far as flooring and stuff like that, that's not something that's eligible.
Even though that downstairs is strictly the community
It's
center.
still a government building, unfortunately. As far as programming goes, we do provide funds to Youth and Rec for as far as financial aid for summer day camp and teen club.
Yes.
And it's similar to the senior center. If they have a need otherwise that they want to see funded, they could surely put that in their request to us.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
That we have nobody else signed up for this public hearing. Are there any others before we close the public hearing? Going once? Going twice? Like to make a motion to close this public hearing? Okay, do I have a second? Councilman Pilarski, all in favor? This public hearing is closed. Next up on our agenda, we have the public hearing for the 2025 preliminary ad valorem budget. And we also have the public hearing for the 2025 basis budget. We will begin that with a presentation from Brian Kraus following the clerk introducing him.
Call for
Supervisor?
public hearing for both budgets.
I think you need to take a vote to open the public hearing.
Before we go any further, make a motion to, should we call for the public hearing first and then do the vote following? All right, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the 2025 preliminary ad valorem budget. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Kaminsky. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. I'll make a motion to open the 2025 benefit basis budget hearing. Do I have a second on that? Second from Councilmember Bukowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
There was a call for public hearing made at the October 8th, 24 town board meeting. The ad valorem preliminary budget was resolution 2024-600, and the benefit basis budget was resolution 2024-601. The ad valorem budget is to discuss the preliminary lighting district and consolidated garbage district budgets for the fiscal year 2025, where the benefit basis budget is on the benefits and the general budget. My office received no comments on either hearing.
Just as a point of clarification, we have both public hearings open right now. We traditionally deal with them both at the same time. Brian, your presentation is going to deal with both, right?
That's correct.
So we've got individuals from the public that want to comment. We'll deal with the individuals that want to speak on the ad valorem budget first, but there's one that wants to speak on benefit basis. So should we take all these individuals and put them together, or is it recommended from the town attorney to keep the hearing the actual public comment portion separate? All right, thank you. Mr. Kraus, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Kim, if you could put the PowerPoint up, that'd be great. All right, good evening, everybody. This presentation is virtually the same as it's been for the last number of years. The budget has been put together initially by the town supervisor, submitted tentatively September 30th. Presented to the town board. The town board has been provided a bunch of information that that they can try to understand the budget better. I've always had my door open to anybody related to that. So this is really just a presentation of facts as they stand currently. And, you know, there are opportunities for the full board to modify this as they see fit based on a majority of the board. So to the general public, a lot of you have the overall summary of the budget right now. It does break down. The top portion of the summary shows you all the various benefit basis budget in the districts, the sanitary sewer district, the drainage district, the hydrant districts. Those are their benefit basis because they kind of represent different portions of the town. The sanitary sewer is the largest budget of all these, and excuse me, it does cover only about 65 to 70% of the town. Does not include the southeast portion of the town, which is covered by Erie County Sewer District 1 or 4. I don't know which one. It's 1. So if you're in that section of town, this does not necessarily impact you. So it has the top portion is the benefit basis, and then the bottom portion is the ad valorem, more or less town-wide items, general fund, highway fund, part-town being the town outside village, general fund, which is where most of our code enforcement items are, our consolidated garbage, and our general lighting. So ultimately, you know, the budget process starts early in August. We send out requests to department heads. They review, evaluate, send that information in to myself and the supervisor. We review those requests. I perform calculations on payrolls, benefits, debt service, things that aren't necessarily specific department items that I take care of within this budget based on our contractual items. Mid-September, we try to complete the budget, determine tax rate, you know, things along those lines, try to make adjustments. Ultimately file the budget September 30th. In October, we hold the public hearing. We try to consider comments and make adjustments where we can. You know, this year was a little bit more unique, even from the standpoint of since we have some newer members on the board, it was requested to have full public hearings with the department heads. We had that last Thursday and Friday. Thought it was an excellent exercise. It gave a lot of information to these new board members and the general public, and talking about the trials and tribulations of the various departments. Ultimately, we have to adopt the budget and submit it to the county they're asking for it by November 20th or 19th, actually, they're asking for. The law says November 20th, so they're probably just asking for it on the 19th to have it ready on the 20th, so. Next slide. I already kind of explained the different budgets, the benefit basis and ad valorem. Next. The next screen is really just the summary that all of you in the public right there have for each of the budgets. In the middle column, it does show appropriations, and that's the full planned spending. You know, the budget is a plan. Doesn't make it, you know, actual, like this is the plan. We're going to try to implement that. Things change. It gets modified during the year. So ultimately, the plan is spending of $110,000 plus. How do we pay? How do we balance the budget? How do we pay for it? We have other revenues of $20,816,000. Actually, go to the next slide there, because that shows it graphically. So it shows other revenues, $20.8 million. The tax levy, the way this budget has been proposed this year, we proposed the tax levy to what we believed it was the tax levy limit at the time. It actually is slightly higher than what we had initially calculated. So that was the plan to increase the taxes to try to balance our spending, and then the ultimate balancing is based on some additional appropriated fund balances. The next graph kind of just shows, you know, when we're talking about this budget, we are talking about the section in green. That is all of these budgets that you see on that Excel spreadsheet. That's the town budget. We don't have any impact on the county, nor the fire, nor the school districts. The next is the tax cap calculation. Again, the tax cap is limited to an increase of property taxes of the lower of 2% or the rate of inflation. Those being the exact same thing this year. It maxes at 2%. Part of the formula includes a portion of potential carryover from the prior year. If we don't use the full tax levy, we are allowed to use a portion of that into the next year, as well as there is an exclusion for some increases related to the retirement system and the police retirement that actually added an additional $75,000 of additional tax cap ability to increase, which we don't have that number in there. We basically proposed the increase at, I'll call it $2.5 million, which we believed was the tax cap at the time. We are within the tax cap per the New York State guidelines. The next screen shows the appropriations by function within the town. Our largest expense is really public safety, police and code enforcement issues. Then you have highway and street lighting, sewers, storm drainage, and hydrants. Our garbage and recycling, general government support, courts, assessors, town clerk, other admin offices, and then finally the culture and recreation area, which talks about parks, youth, rec, and seniors. Next page, please. So this budget is very large, very involved. For me to try to explain every increase or decrease is very challenging. So I do my best to provide the big ticket items or the larger ticket items to show what is impacting our appropriations. First of all, we have union contracts that we have wage increases related to that. So that's over $1 million, $1,065,000 impact on this budget. We have an increase in union wage step increases for when we have steps for newer hired employees. When they come in the door, they usually get step increases from year 1 through year 6 or 7, depending on what titles they're in. So this impacts, when we have turnover and you have newer people, you have these step increases that are impacting us by about $137,000. There is an increase in overtime budgets, and that's mainly due to the contractual rate increases related to these union contracts. In the courts, we had additional court costs related to a new senior court clerk position that really wasn't included in the 2024 budget, as well as a full-time drug court analyst that was kind of phased in 2024. We had half of that position funded. The other half is kind of being funded now. There has been some efforts to try to fund that through grants. The grants really haven't totaled the full other half. So there is an impact here related to that. It was determined during the year that we needed a new electrician, so we hired a new electrician position at the tune of $79,500. In the highway department, with this new TCSU agreement, there's the ability to eliminate one of the highway working foremen for $80,000. There's a savings there related to that. The next one is also a tree trimmer position that has ultimately hasn't been occupied, and the equipment related to that the vehicles aren't available. The position was determined that we would be able to work without it. Savings $58,000. In the supervisor's office, he determined to eliminate one of the full-time secretaries and hire a part-timer instead of that for a savings of $20,300. In the police and dispatchers contracts, there was a new article that basically allowed them to sell back current comp time currently, and they're entitled to comp time no matter what. This actually allows us to pay this currently rather than them accumulate it, and over time when they leave, get paid for it at higher rates. So this, even though this is a current increase in the budget, long-term it's a savings to the town. The part-time and seasonal payrolls, we know minimum wage is increasing from $15 to $15.50 now. Our part-time and seasonal payroll budget lines did increase $180,000 in this budget. So in total payroll adjustments total $1,652,287. The next function or category of spending is related to equipment. And so we do have some increases in equipment lines, but in total, it's a decrease. So we have a police equipment for some grant expenditures of $105,000. Highway equipment that we've been hearing, has needed to be funded. We increased that $80,000. Sanitation tote purchases that haven't been funded in the past are now in this budget funded for $35,000. Parks and building maintenance vehicles, we did increase their line by $25,000. Emergency services, this is a newer department. They had requested some equipment for emergency situations, mainly related to snow and other difficult traveling situations. So there is funding for $15,000 for some equipment related to that in that budget. And we did, remove the funding for the sanitation packer truck for $275,000. So in total, net decrease of $15,340. The next section of the contract is non-personnel outside contracts or services that are appropriated. One of the items that you probably have heard in the past is that we're looking to do this streetlight LED conversion project. With that, it's the town acquiring the assets related to the streetlights, and that eliminates a significant cost that we are billed related to that from the utilities. So there is a savings of almost $1.4 million that later in my presentation, when we talk about debt service, our debt service is increasing by about that exact amount of money. And in 10 years, then that project will be completed. We'll have new LED streetlights, better cost, highly cost efficient. And this is a project that many communities have already embarked on, and we feel this is a very impactful project for the town. The police data processing contracts, we did get some grants to obtain the Axon body cameras, but then there is now software maintenance related to that of $327,000 annually. So that's increased in the budget. Information technology has increases related to software maintenance and mobile devices of about $96,000. We have a contractual relationship with the Buffalo Sewer Authority that goes back to 1970, I think, 70 something. Yeah, that we are involved with, that they treat our sewage, and they're entitled to charge us for their contractual costs related to that. They've increased this budget by $2.1 million. Erie County Sewer also does have some charges to our town, that as well as some other sewer repairs. All of the sewer type increases are related to this DEC consent order that is really it's basically on for every community, that we have to make sure that we have tightened up all our pipes. We line these pipes, we make sure the manholes are tight, that there's not inflow from other outside, when it's raining and along those lines, and that we're actually just sending sewage to the Buffalo Sewer Authority and not like extra rainwater and things along those lines. And in the past, when the rainwater has been, overwhelming, that we can't handle it, it's had to be discharged. So now we're not really discharging as much anymore. So it's a benefit to the environment. Sanitation landfill costs, this is the normal CPI increase, about $50,000 planned. And then as we went through 2024, the recycling contract ended. We asked for bids. We did bid that out, and the increase, we had a very beneficial contract previous, that we were able to utilize as long as we could. We had to bid this out in 2024. It increases their cost by $700,000. So in total, contractual lines increased $2.1 million. Involved with, having the employees in the various unions, we have fringe benefit costs related to those employees. Increases in wages involve increases in tax and payroll taxes. So there's an increase of $60,000 related to that. The New York State retirement system annually bills the town for the employees and the tiers that they are in. The retirement rates did increase in 2025 by 9%. That impacts the town $632,000. When employees retire, which we have a number of them retiring, they walk out the door, they're entitled to being compensated for their vacation time and other time off. We have a significant increase in that, increasing $326,000 in this budget, as well as then employee and medical costs related to health insurance is increasing by $201,000. Debt service. Due to needed aging infrastructure updates, sewers, drainage, buildings, and highways, we've done a number of that type of bonding. The increase is $91,000 of new debt service. That's net of what was falling off. So that's the net impact. Here's the LED street light that I was talking about, a debt service related to that, $1.427 million. With regard to risk, we have general liability and workers' compensation costs that have increased in 2025 for $168,000. The other revenue side of the equation doesn't have like large increases in items. The sales tax has been budgeted to what seems like a maximum. So like interest income, thankfully, is still increasing. We have an increase of $163,000. We have police revenue increases that they have through grants, other agreements with other organizations that utilize our employees on overtime and reimburse, and they use our training facilities as well, the new shooting facility and whatnot, increasing some revenues by $410,000. And then we did have to reduce the amount of American Rescue funds used in 2025. There are funds that have to be fully committed by the end of 2024. So these cannot be used in our operating budget in 2025. So overall, there's a reduction in our other revenue by $189,000. The appropriated fund balance side of things is kind of where we have plugged the budget in 2025. Again, we raised taxes to the maximum level of the tax cap. So we do feel that we do have enough cash reserves to utilize additional $4.345 million of fund balances. We have analyzed fund balances and projected them. We have a fund balance policy to keep most of these fund balances at 15% of our operating budgets. Right now, it does appear that with our projections that we will be very near or at all of those levels in the at least the largest funds. So that's the plan right now. Next page. So ultimately, this budget change summary shows an increase. So on the yellowish color is our spending, and it highlights all the various items that I just spoke to you about, increasing the appropriation $6.6 million to $110 million. And the other side of things is the increases related to the tax levy, the decrease related to other revenues, and the increased use of the appropriated fund balance to balance this budget. The last two slides my projections, I try to make a projection on an average household. This by no means is a perfect calculation, but it's a reasonable estimate on a house that's valued about $155,400. That's kind of the average of a household in Cheektowaga. Benefit basis has some increases in the sewer district, small increase in some of the hydrant districts, a reduction in the drainage district for an additional $10 of tax increase on that $155,000 home. The last item would be the ad valorem or townwide budget. And so the impacts on the general fund, highway, garbage and lighting, in total $61,000. So that that is a result of the increase of the property tax levy. That's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. So that's the presentation from our finance director. What we have next up is comments on the budget and the budget presentation. We have 4 people signed up for the ad valorem budget. What we're going to do is take those commenters first, and then we'll get on to the benefit basis side. Dawn Filipski, you're signed up as the first speaker on the ad valorem budget.
So I just had a question on how much in the it looks like on a $300,000 house, your taxes on that small piece are going to go up $120. Is that what I read correctly?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And how much of that money is going to fund debt, did you say? I think I missed that. From us bonding over these last probably 10 years that we've been bonding and bonding, how much is that going to increase our?
I don't actually have that number at the tip of my tongue, but I mean, increasing wise, as I explained it increased $91,000 for the general debt service, not including the $1.4 million related to the lighting district, which we have found equivalent savings in the contractual lines related to that.
And where are all these fund balances coming from? Because I remember distinctly when we were talking about highway, we couldn't use fund balances because we didn't want to go below 15%. And now all of a sudden we have, I don't even know how much in fund balances because it's hard for me to read this. $15 million in fund balances. Is that what I'm reading? I can't.
What you're reading is what we are going to appropriate in this budget to balance the budget. We're going to appropriate
from savings that
from our savings.
from other
Correct.
savings. So
Yeah.
we had $15 billion,
15 million.
15 million, and we didn't want to spend more of that to use for the highway because we were told we couldn't. And so we took and bonded money instead of using those funds, which now we're going to free willy just take them out and use them to balance a budget. Correct?
What I would tell you, Dawn, is that in my opinion, we raised the taxes to what we were allowed to do. And that's my answer.
Okay.
Is it possible to get clarification for everybody watching on that question at least?
Maybe not today. Doesn't look like it.
No,
And then the other question, hang on a minute. The other question I had was, it doesn't say, maybe I'm missing this, but year to date, it doesn't say how much we've spent in these columns. Am I missing that someplace?
Which columns are you speaking?
Well, like, how much did we spend on total general fund year to date? It says appropriations, which means we put away 59, whatever, to spend on it. Your tax levy was 46, and you're using a fund balance of 6 something. So how much did we actually spend in the general fund? And why would we get to this point in the game and say, what the heck? We're out of money. Why wouldn't we pay better attention all freaking year long to how much we're spending coming off this board? And when departments are overspending, who is watching that? Who's coming up here and saying, this department is overspent? This department is overspent. There isn't a soul doing that, and I think we better get our act together because the taxpayers of this town are sick and tired of having their pockets picked every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dan Collender.
All right, my question is, I got a couple questions, but we're gonna start with the appropriated fund balance on that cover page that you handed out for the sanitary or consolidated sewer district. Okay, there's $3.7 million of reserve funds used to balance that budget. Why can't those people be taxed enough so that we don't have to dip in $3.7 million of reserves? Why can't they be taxed for what they're using? And on that $3.7 million, what fund did that come out of?
The $3.7 million is the sanitary sewer budget. It's the consolidated sewer budget, Dan, that you ask about every year.
Yep.
You're not part of it, Dan. You're in the southeast portion of the town.
Keep it going.
And so
So they have $3.7 million surplus.
that's what we're planning on using right now, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, in the budget, there's roughly about $2.7 million that we spend every single year in interest payments. Can anybody up here tell me what could we use that $2.7 million for if we didn't pay it to bondholders? I'm sure we all got a list. I heard all the wants that people were talking about last week. We want this, we want this, we want a pay raise, we want more money, we want more money. But yet we continue, and some people up here continue to lobby to do more bonding, spend more interest. So we have less money to spend now, and then we pay for it 3 times over, 2 times over when we get down 20 years down the road. Okay, we need to find a better way to reduce that bonding so we have that money to spend now. That's how I function. Okay, I don't have any loans. I don't have any credit card debt. I have all that money. I'm not giving it to the bank. I don't care what they could charge me 50% interest. I don't care because I pay my card off every single month. I don't care. That's money in my pocket, not the bank's pocket. That's how this board should be looking at it. Bonding is just giving our tax money away. That's $2.7 million less we have for all kinds of different programs other people are going to come up here and speak about. So until you guys get your act together on that, you may just want to go to school and learn a little bit about it. And I have more questions, but I'll leave them up to somebody else, and you know where to find me.
Thank you, Dan. Our next speaker is Sarah. I can't read the full last name, so I'm just going to say Sarah W. Good evening.
Hello. Although not mentioned on this presentation, I'm here to talk about the $20,000 decrease in the youth and rec budget specifically for the pools. I've worked for the Town of Cheektowaga Youth and Rec Department since 2017. I have swam at Dingens Pool every year since 2006. And in my years teaching there, I've taught well over 100 kids. Some of my early students are now becoming the lifeguards for the pools. At the pools, there is a sense of community. I've attended college, gotten my degree, have a job pertaining to my degree, but I still come back every year to teach night lessons, fall lessons, and winter lessons. The reason for coming back is definitely not for the money, but for the sense of community. About half the staff for the fall and winter lessons are people who have graduated school and have full-time jobs. But let's just state some facts for the record. According to the National Drowning Prevention Alliance, public swimming pools foster a sense of community, promote fitness for the whole family, increase public safety, offer career opportunities, and promote water accessibility. A study from the National Recreation and Park Association says that there are 7 outcomes that are particularly important results of participation in out-of-school time programs, which include reducing juvenile delinquency, reducing negative behaviors, exposure to less violence, improving children's educational performance, decrease costs related to obesity, increase the economic contributions of young people, and help youth develop self-confidence, optimism, and initiative. These programs that are funded will create physical and psychological safety, structure that is developmentally appropriate, supportive relationships, opportunities to belong, positive social norms, support for efficacy and mattering, opportunities for skill building, integration of family, schools, and community efforts, which can be clearly noted in the programs that have been provided for decades. The median income of Cheektowaga is around $65,000, with more than 10% living below the poverty line. Your salary of $21,475 as a town board member is about a third of the median income of your constituents. Many of the families of this town rely on the programs provided by Youth and Rec, especially the pools. With a median income so low, people don't have pools in their backyards and they rely on these public pools when the temperatures rise. For those families who want to use the pool, they will now be forced to go to places like the YMCA, where a family membership is around $80 per month with the town's median income. Do you think those families who have incomes of $65,000 per year are going to spend that money? Or do you think they want to choose the $10 town ID card, which is good for 2 years at these pools? I just want to add that I have worked and played at Dingens for so long, and these cuts to the budget for these small pools, there are so many kids that will come over. They don't have parents during the day to watch them. We were their babysitters. They became part of the pool. And I just really don't want to see these little pools close just because of $20,000. And especially when you guys have put so much money into Dingens with the new pipe system and Maryvale with the new filter system. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next speaker, Diane Benchkowski.
Thank you, Supervisor. Actually, I had foiled the budget prep report on October 2nd, and I didn't receive it until today. So I'm not sure why. I know you guys all had your binders. It would have just been easy for somebody to email it to me, but I had to wait the full 20 days. Actually, wasn't full 20 business days. So I'm a little unorganized with my comments. So I'm hoping you could keep this budget hearing open for till the next town board meeting. However, a few of my observations, which I know it was a tough budget for everybody. Every year I had to go through that, Ryan, and it's not easy. However, my first issue was any elected official shouldn't be asking for a raise, including the highway superintendent who was just elected last year. It was publicized at 83,791 last year. And then somebody, I think it was passed at 83,791. So I don't know why now you're increasing the highway superintendent's salary to 89,500. Also, the highway superintendent budget, which the one part that comes from the general fund, has increased so much. But when I finally got the budget prep report, I could see it's because you're switching some of the clerical into that line from the 300 line, which makes sense. However, you're adding some upgraded position titles. And if you don't understand that really costs a lot of money. You're committed to that. Once you start upgrading those titles, and the people in that office, wonderful people, very good at their job, can do their same duties under their titles they're in now. So there really is no reason to upgrade anybody's title throughout the town. That if they're in a title right now doing that job, I think that costs too much money in the long run. And this goes back to settling the TCEA contract. I think if they would get their yearly increases, they wouldn't be asking for these title upgrades. Then you wouldn't have to do that. So that's why it's so important to get these contracts settled sooner than later, so you don't have to do those upgrades in the titles. And it looks like you're adding positions in the TCEA and the TCSU. I wouldn't be adding any more positions. And right now you've added quite a few, which I don't understand, because that also is going to box you in for the next several years. We got the number down to 223, exactly as the contract said. And I think now you're up, from what I could see, like 231 or something like that. That's quite a bit. I would be careful with that. The electrician, I don't know why you added another electrician. We always had one, and Jeff did a great job when I was here. I don't know why you have to have another electrician. So subcontracting highway work. It's costing the town too much money. I actually
Over 3
feel
minutes. Does anybody want to extend?
it's a public hearing. I think I have unlimited time for a public hearing.
Continue, Supervisor.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
great.
Yeah, it's not public comment, it's public hearing, so we've never really put a,
Take as long as you want.
thank you. The highway, lost my train of thought here. Costing the subcontracting is costing too much. Actually, I do remember several years ago, the highway superintendent had decided to add a working foreman to do the scrapping program and eliminate an MEO, whether it was A or B, and a laborer. I suggest you put that MEO A or B back in and that laborer if you're going to eliminate that working foreman, because those are the people you need on the job doing the snow plowing and the paving and the tree removal and the ditch cleaning, instead of passing it off to the subcontractors, which we're paying 3-4 times as much as our employees. Also, Youth and Rec is asking for some upgraded titles in her programming, but I think she mentioned it's because her employees just can't make ends meet. Once you settle that contract, that should take care of that. Same thing with the senior planner, senior fire inspector, senior code enforcement officer. Those are all titles that those can be done on the current, under the current titles that you have in the union book. Same thing with the 2 clerks in the highway office. They're asking for upgrades and titles, not necessary. Main Pump is asking for, it looks like a maintenance worker, which we went through this when I was the supervisor. They eliminated it finally because there's not enough work, full-time work there for that person. So what they were supposed to be doing is sharing a maintenance worker with Main Pump and the sewer department. So I think you should probably talk to both those department heads and see if there's some way to share the maintenance worker at sewer with the Main Pump. It's just maintenance work. Finance and accounting, this would probably be a good time to add a controller. I know it would add money now. However, in the long run, it would probably save you millions. Because when I look at that warrant every 2 weeks, or twice a month, I cringe to see the money being taken out of these accounts with nobody questioning and no resolution in place for tens, $20,000, $50,000, and there's no resolution. And those are, a lot of them are public works projects. And Mr. Kraus said, I think you were asked at the last meeting, could you use a controller? And you said it's a good idea because you're being overwhelmed with a lot of things. And I think that this might be the time for somebody to start making sure there's no wasteful spending. Also, and I'm trying to pass down knowledge that I've acquired over the years that maybe a lot of you don't know about, the Full Brothers landfill. That should be coming up, and Pat Bowen would know, he probably has the original agreement, when that should be, our obligation as the town should be over with. I believe it's around 2027, but I also think there's a clause in there saying when we hit a certain number, which I believe we're way over that right now. So I would take a look at that, because every year you're having to spend a lot of money on the maintenance of Full Brothers landfill. Some revenue ideas, look at permit fees as a way to increase revenue. Right now, there was an article in the Buffalo News about the city of Buffalo. They have an ordinance about the Airbnbs and VRBOs that anybody that has that has to get a permit, and they're pretty expensive. And I know that we have a lot of those in town where we could be generating revenue from those and at least getting a handle on, who has a Airbnb, VRBO, and, our police department also would know. I'm sure they're called a lot of times to these places. New permit fees for grass cutting. Amherst has one. They charge quite a bit of money for landscaping / grass cutting. And then they have a list of those that applied for permits on their website. Same thing with snow plowing. We have snow plowing, but our fees are way out of date. You really should start looking at our fees and increasing some of those permits and fees, and even in the building and plumbing department, because those have not been upgraded for the last 12 or 15 years. And the way inflation's going up, everything has to go up. Also, somebody mentioned about the website. I know that when we talked about our emergency manager creating the full-time position, he was going to handle the website. That was talked about when former police chief Brian Gould was here, because we had met with the Amherst police and emergency manager system coordinator, and their person handles that website. And I know that the police also have their own website, which he's a great coordinator over there that I'm sure that Jay could work with. So I think that might be a good way to get that website under control, because it really is not the best as far as getting information off of. Now that I'm away and being a citizen, if I need information, it's hard to find. Just real quick, I did, want to mention a couple other things. Engineering, there's, it's a complicated situation. I know that we had used some ARPA funding, which, going back to the ARPA funding, it's just too bad that a lot of that funding was wasted on cosmetics here. And it's still hot in here. You're supposed to do HVAC system. You walk in here compared to out in the hallway, and it's hot. And you can't see those monitors from where I'm sitting. I think I saw Ted had to move up to see them. We used to have that nice thing on the monitor on wheels, so that could be moved all over the whole town hall. I don't get that, but it's nice, except for the dusty old chairs you left in here. But I just don't know why the ARPA wasn't discussed with the whole board, because we were doing that when I was here. There was no more discussion in 2024 about what to use the remaining ARPA funds on. And there are a lot of capital projects that could have been used for things, necessities that were asked for between the sewer and the highway and the drainage. And yet we did cosmetics and moving offices around, which to me, I always felt we could do with what we have. It wasn't that bad. So going back to that, I look at engineering. Paul will be leaving soon. You wanted to, looks like an increase for another principal engineer assistant. I wouldn't go that way. If you look at the job descriptions for a junior engineer or a junior civil engineer, which are in the CBA contract already, they are less money per hour, and they're more qualified to do engineering work. I think you would need that rather than a principal engineer assistant or a senior engineer assistant. And it would save you quite a bit of money because right now, one of our principal engineer assistants is making $98,000 without overtime. And our deputy town engineer is only making $89,000. How does that make sense? So you got to be careful with those hourly positions, and every year adding pay increases and not enough to some, or you might have to go based on performance instead of just everybody get across the board department head pay increases. Again, that extra electrician, I think that I don't know why that was added in. There's also a line under central garage for more pool cars. I think the department had asked for 28,500 and you budgeted 128.5. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was that, but why you wouldn't just go, because we've always gone around that number, or 31,000, and buy them a little every year because they weren't being used. We found used as much as we thought they were. If I can quickly. Overtime payroll. Oh, in community development, I'm not sure Rachel, overtime. She has been only using like 500, 666 on 2022 and 23, and now it's jumped to $10,000 of overtime. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but I mean, some of that could be used for some of the other administrative costs, I believe. So, and I think you really have to take a look at, I didn't even get to the building and plumbing department, but I think they were on it. You wanted to add something into engineering, a part-time clerk for Pat Bowen. That was to take those appointments for the DEC consent order. I don't know if you ever hired that person or not, but that was supposed to be for ARPA funds. So, and I'm not sure, it doesn't really reflect that here, I can see, but possibly take a look at that. And why has the TCSU briefing pay gone up so much? More than doubled, for instance, in the sewer department. Last year, it was $4,979. This year, you budgeted $10,276. That's crazy. And they're really, I don't think you've really added personnel to the sewer department. So, I mean, I'm here just to advocate for myself as a resident. And I know it's hard. We're all on tough times, but we might have to just not do as much as we normally do. I wouldn't even start bonding next year. You need to catch up with what you have now, these increases, and, you know, there's other things that have to be done, like cosmetic town hall upgrades, the lighting, and instead of some of the infrastructure work. So hopefully you can keep this public hearing open so more residents will have a chance, an opportunity to speak on it once they review their packets and what Brian had presented tonight. Thank you very much.
Supervisor, we did have you on for the the benefit basis portion, which would.
Yeah, because that included, I think, the sewer, and that's when I brought up the maintenance worker for sewer and main pump.
I just wanted to confirm you had an opportunity to say your piece on
So
that.
should I say that separately? I mean,
You spoke to a little bit already. Did you have any
Yeah.
additional comments on just that portion of the
for
budget?
now, I can't, yeah, I really, I tried to condense what I had to say. So, oh, yeah. I wouldn't get rid of that tree trimmer position in highway either. I mean, you're subcontracting tree trimming and tree removal out. And you're paying 3 times the amount that our tree trimmers are being paid. I don't know why you're eliminating that. Maybe you can't find somebody, but, like I said, go back to eliminating the working form and that, extra one that was put in for the scrapping program. And it looks like you're not doing that much anymore. And put the MEO and the laborer in, and I would keep a tree trimmer in there. No new electrician. I don't think you need another one. And I guess I've said my piece for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Mhm.
Thank you.
With that, would you like to sign up, Mr.?
I didn't realize it was multiple.
Absolutely. I will put you on for both.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, one thing that I just want to quickly address what Dan had brought up about the debt and the interest. Obviously, debt and interest is an accumulation of previous things that have been done. So for the most part, the two on the left, as the audience looks, they were not part of almost all of that debt, okay? But it's been an accumulation over the years. So we'll see next year how it changes with this new board. And again, as I had said earlier this year, a massive mistake that was made last December was the contract with Wendell. Wendell was paid $12 million that if anyone on this board or the board from last year, sorry, not pointing news to, anyone on the board from last year had talked to other municipalities in Erie County, including Depew, a mile down the road. They went directly to the utility and for 4%, 1/25th of the cost that this board paid, you could have gotten the same thing done. You could have paid $400,000. The taxpayers would have broken even in a handful of months.
And instead of paying more in 2025 and for the next 10 years, there would have been $1.5 million decrease in spending from the electricity. It blows my mind that not one of the 7 that was on the board a year ago did not reach out to any other municipality in this area. But they went to a private company that the utilities would do the exact same thing for 4% of the cost. 400,000 out of petty cash compared to 12 million plus interest for the next 10 years. It's just mind boggling. But anyways, that's in the past. I wanted to comment quickly on why we have so much debt in this town. It's decisions like that that are made far too often. One thing I want to ask the finance man, and again, I brought this up earlier, was the interest that the town earns on its cash each year. You said you're projecting about $160,000 increase, I think, 25 from 24. What's the number? How much do you project to earn this year? And what's your projection for next year?
I'm not prepared to give you those numbers off the top of my head. Sorry. I just can tell you what the increase was. So, and as we talk about using fund balances, that is cash in our banks. So as we use more fund balances, we have less cash to earn interest on. So, I mean, the plan to have interest income increase hopefully will come to fruition. But as we potentially use more fund balances, we're going to have less cash invested.
Okay, looking through the paperwork, I guess, I thought I saw about 500,000 a year ago was projected for this year in terms of interest income. Does that ring a bell with anyone? 500,000. I thought I saw that somewhere. I don't have the thing with me. But, and if you're saying a 15% minimum balance, that's 16, 17, 18 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, as a bare minimum in the bank. Is that correct? 15% of 110 million?
Yes.
Okay. In February, you received from the taxpayers about, what, 73 million in taxes in a very short time? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You get sales tax money from the county and other sources. So your revenue, I think, is what, 100, I don't know, whatever the number is, 80, 90 million or something. So in February, your 18 million jumps to about 90. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, it's used a little bit, it's used a little bit every day, every week, every month over the course of a year. Is that correct?
In theory, yes.
Okay. In
That is-
theory. Thank you.
Ted, not to cut you off, that is 3 minutes. The agenda does say up to 3 minutes. Does this board want to extend past 3 minutes?
Take a motion to extend as long as you need.
Thank you. I promise it won't be long. We had talked about, I had brought up again earlier this year about that New York State money market account for municipalities. The yield on it today is 4.7% with no risk and 100% liquidity. The money that you keep in reserves and the money that you receive, can you explain to me if at any time less than 90% of the cash is not with New York State in the money market? I mean, do you keep more than 10% of all of this money in local banks? And if so, are they paying more than the 4 3/4 right now?
I wouldn't say that we keep as much as you're asking right now. And I mean, we do keep probably more than that in the local banks. The local banks do have money market accounts that may not be the equivalent of New York Class. We do use New York Class as well.
Okay. And again, I'm just a, private citizen here, but I guess I don't understand. If anyone in this audience had a choice between keeping their liquid money at 4 3/4 or something less, and if you're talking about your entire net worth, I don't understand why it would be anything less. And my whole point to this is, When you look out over the whole year, the checking accounts, if you start with 90 million in February, you probably average 25 or 30 million throughout the year. That's $1 million, assuming just 4%. Rates are probably coming down next year. Assuming 4%, that's $1 million of interest. If you're not grabbing at least 90% of that, I got to ask, are you doing your job for the citizens and the taxpayers here? Why subsidize M&T and any other bank that you're dealing with by keeping money with them at a lower interest rate? And you know what? If it was 10 or 100 bucks or 1,000, no big thing. 20, 30, 50, 80 million? Anybody with a calculator while I'm talking want to figure out 4% on 80 million, how much interest that is a day? That's a ton of money for a very short period of time. Last question I just have to ask, since, you know, I guess I'm really not going to find out about that. I don't know if there's anyone behind me that lives in the village of Depew, but if there are, the rest of us ought to thank them once again for subsidizing our taxes. Was the overcharge to the residents of Depew reduced this year, or was their credit increased in this budget?
The credit remains as $500,000.
Okay, so the folks there are paying at least 2.25 million more than they need to. The credit's 500,000. So $1.75 million a year that this good citizens of the village of Depew are subsidizing the rest of the town, about $500 a household. So again, I'll end it by saying once again, anyone that lives here in Depew, if you want to state it, I think the rest of us owe you a big thanks for subsidizing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. And with that, we will be, our next meeting is going to contain resolutions that will consider amendments to, I'm assuming, based on our discussions here. Likely amendments, but most certainly resolutions to pass a ad valorem budget and a benefit basis budget. Those resolutions will offer the opportunity for the public to speak once again on the budget. And because of that, I'm going to offer a motion to close the public hearing and ask if there's a second.
I'll make a motion to keep the hearing open.
We'll consider that motion in
I'll
just a minute.
second that.
My motion's on the floor. Is there a second for my motion? I have a second. All in favor of the motion to close the public hearing? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Councilmember Jazinski offered a motion to keep the public hearing open, and there was a second from Councilmember Thompson. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to join the majority as an aye. All right. The public hearings remain open. Next up, we have the consent agenda announcement. A consent agenda is contained in this meeting. The consent agenda is designed to assist in making the meeting shorter and more efficient. Items left on the consent agenda may not be discussed when the consent agenda comes before the town board. If any council member wishes to discuss a consent agenda item, please tell me now and I will remove the item from the consent agenda and it will be added as a separate resolution item.
I'd like to remove number 9.
And that's
4.
just 654?
For me, yes.
Okay.
$648, $649, $650.
$665.
That's 665?
55.
655.
665.
$652.
652. Councilmember Thompson? So 652, right?
Yes.
I have 7 as well. Are there any others?
So what do we have? I have 648, 649, 650, 652, 654, 655, 665, and 650.
I have, can you say that again, Councilman?
So I have, is that 7? 648, 649, 650, 652, 654, 655, 665, and 650 was added at the end.
You said that one twice, so yes,
Yeah,
7 items.
I just wanted
Want
to,
to make sure we got, thank you.
just wanted to confirm the list. That's the list I have. Madam Clerk, do you have the same list? Are there any others before we go back to the clerk?
Actually, because I want to discuss this one. Apologize, what's, 663,
663?
correct.
All right, any others before we go back to the town clerk? All right, Madam Clerk, the floor is yours.
I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting agenda as is. I need a motion.
I'll make the motion. Aye.
Aye.
I have a couple items on the table. Do I have a motion and a second to move any or all resolutions?
I'll make a motion to move both items. Aye.
Nowak, seconded by Councilmember Pilarski. Highway Superintendent, with the consultation of the Engineering Department, has prepared a list of streets to spend town highway monies for the fiscal year 2024 for paving and the installation of new drainage and permanent improvements, subject to limitations set by the New York State Capital Highway Improvement Program, or CHIPS, funding and the Cheektowaga Town Board. The Town Board of the Town of Cheektowaga hereby approves said 2024 paving and drainage list and to spend town highway funds as required by law in an amount not to exceed $2,202,694.18.
All right, on the question, there was a question in the resolved about the dollar amount there. So I asked the question, how was that calculated? The answer I received is that it has to do with five different numbers. The first is the paved New York numbers at 174,979.66. The second is winter recovery that comes in just over $202,000. The third is POP, paver potholes at 196,520. Next is the CHIPS funding at $644,072.06. And the last number was the paving bonding for this year of $1 million. And if all those numbers are added together, they come up to 2,217,694.18. They're $15,000 more than the number listed in the resolution. So based on the explanation provided to me and the numbers provided there, we did talk about this briefly in the work session as well. I'd like to make an amendment to this resolution to change that number, that 2.202 million to 2,217,694.18. Is there a second on that? Second from Councilmember Pilarski. All in favor of the amendment?
Like to poll roll call vote.
Right? So we're doing a roll call vote on the amendment?
Yep, this is a roll call vote on the amendment to change the amount that is listed in the last resolved. Councilmember Bukowski?
Yes.
Member Jazinski?
No.
Councilmember Kaminsky? Councilmember Pilarski? Councilmember Thompson?
No.
Supervisor Noack?
Yes.
Amended. We'd be voting on the resolution now as amended. Councilmember Bukowski? Councilmember Jazinski?
Oh.
Member Kaminsky? Councilmember Pilarski?
Yes.
Member Thompson?
No.
Supervisor Noack?
Yes.
Sponsored by Councilmember Pilarski, seconded by Councilmember Bukowski. As resolution dated July 2nd, 1990, the town board adopted local law number 2 of the year 1990, titled "A Local Law to Create the Cheektowaga Conservation Advisory Council." The existing members of the CCAC have expressed interest in continuing service on the board. The following individuals being and hereby are reappointed to the CCAC effective October 15th, 2024 through October 15th, 2026. That includes Carol or Sandy Persblak, Robert Becker, and Joseph Fisher. Stephen Nowicki of Cheektowaga, New York, being and hereby is appointed as a new member to the CCAC effective October 15th, 2024 through October 15th, 2026. And also noted that Carol or Sandy Persblak will serve as the chairperson.
On the question? I just want to thank those that stepped up and volunteered to serve on this board for doing so, and hoping for a day where we get more folks willing to serve on this board, and ideally, we would have a full board in the future. Any other council members? Councilmember Jazinski?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of Sandy being on it. I think she really is a conservative-minded person, talking to her in the past, but you know, talking about conservatism, we have somebody who's on this resolution that doesn't have the first clue about conservatism or conservation. I am on several conservation boards and clubs and committees, and you know, building and apartment complexes and stuff is not being conservative minded or considering conservation. So I'd like to, you know, approve Sandy, but as far as Sandy, let's see, Robert, and then Joseph, I'd be good with. So I'd like to amend it to have those 3 be done, or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
There a proper amendment? It's sounding to me like you want to remove a certain individual. Which individual?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Stephen Nowicki knows the first thing about conservation. I mean, he talks about building these apartment complexes. To me, that's not being conservation wise. I think, you know, Sandy, on the other hand, yes, she does. She talks about, you know, green things and stuff like that. So I could definitely see her being on this, but as far as Stephen, I don't see the need for him if he doesn't share conservation values. I am on a couple conservation clubs and, you know, belong to a couple societies, and, you know, and my doings, you know, building is not being conservative or taking care of conservation. Somebody was saying earlier how, you know, we're currently pushing all the wildlife out of Cheektowaga and stuff like that. I haven't heard one word out of that gentleman's mouth about saving the wildlife in this town, because I know myself, as well as a lot of people in this town, love our wildlife in this town. You know, we love the different, you know, varieties of birds and deer and you know, animals like that. So that's why we moved to a town like this. But I think if we're going to have people that are going to be on a board, at least have somebody that actually has some, you know, tangible experience with conservation.
I hear you. It sounds like you're offering an amendment. What's your amendment?
I'm good with the resolution, except with the exception of, Mr. Noecki.
Not a speaking period, I'm sorry. Is there somebody that would like to turn that into a proper resolution and second it? Or proper amendment and second it, rather? Okay, Councilmember, how would the amendment read? What are you suggesting? I understand the intent. Is it to remove a name simply, remove more than that? What exactly are we doing to this resolution?
Can I help the council member out? What he's looking to do is resolve or take out the last and be it further resolved. So if that's what you want, Mike, just say, I'd like to remove the last at, be it further resolved from the resolution to be my amendment. And
Yep.
then someone will second that.
Yep, that's what Mr. Pilarski said. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Councilmember Pilarski. Now that we're all agreeing on exactly what we're doing, I don't mean to be a pain about it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that there's no miscommunication on something like this. If there's a proper motion and second on the floor to strike the and be it further resolved, all in favor of that? Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Madam Clerk, to clear up the confusion, can we have a roll call?
On the amendment to remove the and be it further resolved paragraph in Resolution 632, Councilmember Bukowski. Councilmember Jazinski.
So we're passing to change the last resolve, everything on the resolution, because it sounds like there's some confusion. I'm just trying to clear.
Can I make a motion to table this? To leave it on the
I'll
table?
second it.
It's been, the resolution's
Already
been pulled off
removed
the
it off the
table
table.
and a second tabling requires 4 votes. Can we take a roll call vote on tabling this again?
Hold on.
Yeah.
There is already a motion on the floor
Proper motion.
to amend the resolution. A proper resolution amendment has been made by Councilmember Pilarski, seconded by
Oh, I didn't make that
Councilmember.
motion.
Pardon me?
I did not make this amendment. That's Jazinski.
Finsky and Thompson made the motion for the amendment.
I was just telling him how to do it.
Proper motion on the floor by the 2 council members. You asked for a roll call vote. We started with Councilmember Bukowski. She has passed. We are moving on to Councilmember Jazinski.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaminsky. Councilmember Pilarski.
No.
Thompson. Yes. Supervisor Nowak.
No.
Councilmember Bukowski. This is to remove and be it further resolved. That was a no. Councilmember Jazinski.
Asking, I thought we already voted.
Passed. You need to put in a vote.
He voted yes. Yeah, that was 2. So it's failed.
Have 4 noes on the amendment. Voting on the resolution as is, because the amendment did not pass. Roll call vote, Councilmember Bukowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Jazinski.
No.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Pilarski.
Yes.
Member Thompson.
No.
Supervisor Nowak.
Yes.
Written. By the end of our tabled items, we have a consent agenda. I have a motion by Supervisor Nowak, seconded by Councilmember Kaminsky to approve all the items on the consent agenda, including meeting minutes of October 8th, 2024, and resolution items 2024-646 through 675. We are recognizing the 7 items that were removed and will be taken as separate resolution items.
We actually had 8 removed. 648, 649. Okay,
Thank you.
Yep.
We added 6-3 at the end.
correct.
Roll call vote to approve the rest of the consent agenda items. Councilmember Bukowski. Yes. Councilmember Jazinski.
Yes.
Member Kaminsky. Councilmember Pilarski.
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yes.
Supervisor Nowak.
Yes.
Now going to start with resolution 2024-648. It is sponsored by Councilmember Kaminsky, seconded by Councilmember Thompson. The change order number 1 for the cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary sewers through cured in place pipe for Phase 5 sewer shed number 6. It is bid item 2019-8 in the amount of $177,115 for the additional lining work being hereby is approved.
Question?
Call it for a roll call vote.
I'd like to comment on it before we go further. These change orders are relative to sewer work we've been doing because of the DEC consent order. And a piece of this whole pie is working with the Environmental Facilities Corporation, the EFC. These resolutions and these change orders being on here tonight are tied in with our timely reporting to EFC and making sure we get them all the information we need to. Delaying or stopping passage of these would complicate that situation. And I've said my piece on it.
That's not entirely accurate, and since you're not a sponsor, Mr. Supervisor, we should have recognized that motion to do a roll call on this.
Yeah, why are we paying $177,000 for work that was done back on April 9th of 2019? Apparently somebody's been dropping the ball on these bids and not bidding them correctly. Otherwise, that's what we do. We bid them real low. And then what we do is we come back and say, hey, you know what? We bid it too low. Now we need an additional $177,000 plus dollars. So, I mean, I think whoever's bidding this work needs to sharpen their pencil and buy a calculator that works.
Any other comments?
Could I just clarify? The work under the change order is work that was added to the project, and it was all done to the rates that were contained in their bid. They bid certain dollar amount to do lining for each linear foot of pipe, and they honored those bid prices for the additional work. So there was no premium price paid for the extra work. It was all done based on the bid price.
So as we discussed this in the work session, some of this work pertaining to the next two resolutions you had mentioned was for potential work coming down the road for us to do. And my issue was with that is, especially around budget time when everybody's focused on, where every dollar and penny are going, to approve hundreds of thousands of dollars in change orders, I think is something that should be consulted before approving the work. And that's why I can take my name off of this resolution. I don't support this resolution at this time.
I'll join the resolution as a second. Any other comments from council members?
Motion on the floor.
What's the motion?
Call for a roll call vote.
We have a roll call vote called on the floor. Councilmember Bukowski? No. Councilmember Jazinski?
No.
Member Kaminsky? Councilmember Pilarski?
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson?
No.
Supervisor Nowak?
Yes.
Not passed. Resolution 2024-649 is sponsored by Councilmember Kaminsky, seconded by Councilmember Thompson. The change order number 2 of the cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary sewers through cured in place for Phase 5 sewer shed number 6 that was bid 2019-8 in the amount of $210,622 for the additional lining work being and hereby is approved.
On the question?
Same situation, this work was done prior to any of us being on the board. That seems to be the pattern, that we bid very low and try to recoup the cost through, change orders. So same thing, I'd like to call for a roll call vote.
All vote has been called. Councilmember Bukowski? No. Councilmember Jazinski?
No.
Member Kaminsky?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilarski?
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson?
No.
Supervisor Nowak?
Recognizing that my name will be a second on the item, yes.
Resolution 2024-650, sponsored by Councilmember Kaminsky, seconded by Councilmember Thompson. Change order number 3 for the cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary sewers. 5 sewer shed number 6, that's bid 2019 amount of $85,878 for the additional lining work being and hereby is approved.
On the question?
Call for roll call vote?
Councilmember Bukowski, Councilmember Jazinski,
No.
Member Kaminsky,
Yes.
Councilmember Pilarski,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
No.
Supervisor Noah,
I just want to clarify that Councilmember Thompson would like his name off this resolution as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I will second this and I'm a yes.
clarify, Councilmember Thompson, you took your name off the 2 previous, correct?
Correct.
Have not passed. Resolution 2024-652, sponsored by Supervisor Noack, seconded by Councilmember Bukowski. AC Power on behalf of BFI Waste Systems of North America LLC has filed project submittals for review under project number 2024-1534 at the address of 777 Indian Road. AC commercial solar generating system covering up to 20 acres of capped landfill as part of the New York State Superfund program. As the approving local body, the town of Cheektowaga, New York grants approval of the site plan dated 5/8/2024, filed under the development review submission. This approval is conditioned of the town engineering department review and acceptance of any related engineering documents, including but not limited to site drainage and grading plans demonstrated in compliance with the landfill cap design requirements.
On the question, considering public comments, but more so the petitions that have been presented before us, including those in the immediate vicinity and those close by, I'd like to pull this item for the meantime and ask the seconder on the resolution to consider joining me in doing same. All right. The sponsor and the second have agreed to pull the item.
Yep, item has been pulled by the sponsors. Yep, hold on to that. And we will put into record the petitions that were signed by residents. Resolution 2024-654, sponsored by Councilmember Kaminsky, seconded by Councilmember Thompson. The contract for the cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary sewer through cured in place pipe for Phase 3 sewer shed number 3, bid 2016-24, was awarded to Instu Form Technology LLC by the town board by resolution dated July 5th, 2016. Project has been completed, and the town board accepts the completed project and directs the supervisor to execute the final acceptance documents.
Right, on the question, Councilmember Pilarski?
Yeah, and the question on this one, actually going back and looking at the July 5th, 2016 resolution and confirming with Mark Crystal, that actually should say a deduction of $39,918.10. So we should be getting a credit for that project. That project was initially budgeted for $3,388,504.40. And it came in at $3,348,506.30, giving us a credit of $39,918.10. So I believe it's a typo in here.
16,000. That's 117.
So our total cost was the 39,000?
That was at the level of 39,000 altogether. You were correct. The attachments are correct. It's just there was a mathematical error in the resolution. There was an actual deduct, a cost saving.
Come up to the podium and so they get all here. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, so on this particular phase, which actually was phase 3 for sewer shed number 3. You are actually correct in the numbers you read, Councilmember Pilarski, and the attached supporting documentation is also correct in the packet for the resolution. It was just a mathematical error in there. It must have been transposed incorrectly in KVS when it came over, or Minitrack in this case. But the bid price was $3,665,304.10. The final cost was $3,348,586.30 for a net cost savings of $316,717.80. So that is a deduct. So that's the number we need to add to that resolution, a deduct of $316,717.80.
But that last whereas, should it read, whereas the project has been completed with a deduct of 39,000, because you're only deducting that 39,000 savings. We've
Yeah,
paid
so
out.
39, get that 39,000 right out of your head. So you're correct.
So
It
we
says
can just pay
whereas
with
it
a
should be-
cost of.
Yeah,
instead of-
whereas
okay.
the final cost of, with the final contract value of, which is stated in, and a deduct of 316,000. So we
Of the
save
project.
316,000 in that job.
So we
Okay?
don't even need the resolution and
We do need a resolution so we can execute the contract final documents.
Finalize
Yes.
it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, so we can make a motion to amend it then.
Correct.
And I'll make a motion to amend the resolution where the third whereas reads as follows. Whereas the project has been completed at a deduction of $316,717.80 to the original contract price, and now therefore be it. Do I have a second on the amendment? All right, second from Councilmember Kaminsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Amendment passes.
One last thing while
yeah.
I'm here, the next one you're gonna bring up actually references the 3 change orders that were defeated. So you might want to clear that up as well. Okay?
Thank you.
We need a vote
Right.
on the amended resolution, please.
And on the final resolution, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries.
4 has passed. Resolution 2024-655, sponsored by Councilmember Kaminsky, seconded by Councilmember Thompson. The contract for the cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary through cured in place pipe for Phase 5 sewer shed number 6. That is bid 2019-8 was awarded to Insituform Technologies LLC by the Town Board by resolution dated April 9th. Project has been completed at an addition of $149,555.80 to the original contract price. This Town Board accepts the completed project and directs the supervisor to execute the final acceptance documents.
On the question?
Oh, it looks like, once again, we added almost $150,000 to a project from 2019. Is that correct? With a change order? Mr. Bowen,
Can you repeat your question?
I'm referring to the $149,555.80. Was that in addition, was that a change order?
Yeah.
So once again, here we are, a project that's from 2019 that we're trying to add almost $150,000.
Two things to consider. One, these two projects, these two resolutions that you're just looking at are part of a $20 million project that was being financed through EFC. Those projects were also delayed for a period of time during COVID. And also the reason for these being closed out now is any work that was on a state highway, we've been waiting a couple of years for permits to be able to complete that work. We didn't get those permits until this September, and we've been scrambling since then to be able to complete the work within the state highway so we can close these projects out. That's the reason for the delays.
Appreciate your answer, but almost $150,000 is a lot of money to the average household, and I don't think there's anybody, that wants to incur any more tax. So I just,
Cost of the average home.
Right, that's the cost of, there you go.
Fair due.
Free home, we just took somebody's house. There you go. So I'd like to make a motion for a roll call vote.
Councilmember, I just would like to add, the pipes that were lined under the change order were planned to be done under a future phase of the project, which is actually currently underway. The cost for lining those pipes will be realized as a credit in the current contract when we go to close that out. So it's not technically costing the town an extra $150,000 for the change orders related to this project. That money will be realized as a credit in the future, the current contract that's going on.
So are you saying it's similar to what just happened now with the last resolution that was actually passed 6 or 8 years ago and we just closed it out now 2 minutes ago? That we'll get a future resolution showing that the current project that is in works right now is going to be less
Correct.
that dollar amount. So we'll be passing a resolution later on to save that funding right there. Thank you.
We got an idea of that dollar amount?
Yes, it says 149,500.
Right. The cost of a person's, the average median household here in Cheektowaga.
Councilman Pilarski, you have the floor. Would you like to finish your thought?
I'm good, thank you.
Just going off of that, I think that information is pretty pertinent and should probably be detailed in these resolutions as a means to track and have that information attached to this.
Yeah, like the cost of material, the cost of labor, where did we actually, where's that cost generated from? I mean, this is very vague. It doesn't, for the layman's person reading this, I'd like to see, a little more of a detail where our taxpayer dollars are going, just to say, oh yeah, for future projects, projects, we got $150,000 that we're gonna stash away, but what are you stashing away for? So when you bid these projects, do you already not get your material cost, and do you already know what your initial labor cost is gonna be?
They did the work at the bid price. So the contracts were all bid out, awarded to the lowest bidder, and the work was done according to the bid prices in the contract. And this was additional work that we asked them to do. Work that we added to the scope of the contract because we needed to get it done.
On that, what you just said there, Pat, one, is it the same company who is on this resolution doing the work right now?
Yes.
And is it a lower rate, what's on this resolution versus what they're charging us right now for the current one, or is that the same? I'm assuming they had to bid on this at another resolution later on for the work that's going currently as we speak.
Correct.
So is that a higher rate than what we're paying right now on this?
I don't remember what the unit prices are on the.
And you don't have it in front of you, but.
Versus 2019, I don't
Okay.
remember what the.
So for the sake of argument, can we hypothetically just, or possibly say, if we don't pass this resolution, they decide to add the cost of this project to the current work they're doing now, we could possibly be paying more then. If they just do it, because it's currently part of the work order right now, correct?
We're talking hypothetically, so
Oh, because they're gonna
hypothetically.
charge us for this work either way, whether it's in this contract
Well, I'd like to
that is
see,
dated.
when you get work done to your car, you want to, you want to know how much it costs. You take your car in to get it fixed, you get a roof on your house, you're going to know how much it costs. And sure, there's underlying things that come up, you might need some sheathing, you might need some trusses, stuff like that. I get that, but, 150,000 to the average household here in the town of Cheektowaga, that's a cost of a house accordingly to our budget.
And I'm just assuming they did this work because they already had the area already opened and ripped apart or whatever. They can just continue and keep going because it was already on the scope to be done. Rather than, for example, which I see very often in the city is they'll pave something and then come back, 2 months later, dig up that saved pavement about 2 feet from where the curb is to put new curbs in. And then you got, uneven pavement and a split right there. Their thought process is, we're already in this. This is already bid out and we got it for future work. Let's just keep going with the work. We're getting a lower cost per linear foot, whatever mile, whatever they charge by.
Thank you, Councilman Pilarski. If, Councilmember Thompson, do you have a question before I say?
I was just gonna ask about the possible credit towards this amount. You can speak to that.
My question.
engineer.
Thank you.
Mark might be able to add something.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Bowen, you explained it once before. Could you take a quick moment to explain it again, then we'll go over to Mr. Crystal? Just so we're crystal clear on this.
What part of it do you want me to explain again?
Long and short, how we have a debit right now, we're anticipating a credit later. That's what we've heard up to this point.
Correct. The change orders that were on the agenda tonight were, two of them were to cover lining work that was done on William Street in advance of a county Department of Public Works paving project on William Street. We decided it'd be a good idea to go and line our sewers before they paved the street, so we wouldn't have to dig it up later on to do a sewer repair or something as part of our lining work. So we lined those sewers as a change order under the lining contract that was underway at the time. Those pipes were scheduled to be lined under a different phase of work. All we're doing now is those pipes are being taken out of that phase, moved up to that phase that was going on at that time. So when we get to the current phase, we will end up realizing the credit for the $149,000.
Thank you so much. Mark, you have the floor.
Okay, so I'm actually going to take a step back. So this is going to get a little confusing, so try to stay with me. I think it's prudent we discuss this now. So actually going back to the change orders that were defeated. So this contract, we began being under consent with New York State back in 2015. Okay, we as a town had to accept that. What that means is it's a court order. We have to abate our sewer overflows. We do not have an option. We are under a court order to do such. Okay, so back then in 2016, we bonded $12 million to start that process. Basically, based on starting that process, we were then able to apply and leverage 4 successful grant applications, one with New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, and 3 subsequent ones with New York State DEC Water Quality Improvement Grants. Okay, so this whole project is here. It's actually 19 separate bids. That's where it gets a little confusing. It's 19 separate contracts, and that's done by design. Okay, so we can use one contract as proof to show for payment for another and so on. It's an admin nightmare, but there's a reason why we did that. Okay, and this was discussed at length back in 15 when we started this process. Okay, so again, we were under contract with InSituForm Technologies for a piece of the puzzle under our EFC grant. Okay, so but that job was let in 2019. Then in 2020, after the pandemic that came through, we were notified by Erie County that they were going to do a mill and overlay of William Street, both pieces, city line to Harlem, and then Harlem to the 90, and then Cuga Creek. That work was performed in 2020. Okay, so we engaged our sewer maintenance department. We televised our sewers underneath William Street because that was not part of the current phase that we were working on. We found anomalies that needed to be rectified. So we did not want to, Barb, you can attest this because you live in that neighborhood. The last thing we wanted to do is let the county go do the work, do a nice mill and overlay, and then we come through 2 years later and dig up the street. Okay, that happens all the time, and we don't want to be that animal that did that. Okay, so we did that. We did the assessment with our in-house cost, again, gentlemen, no cost to the town. And at the same time, we then got under contract with our second water quality improvement grant. Okay, we didn't have the bid out yet because we weren't under contract, but then we got under contract. Okay, so we made the decision to utilize InSituForm Technologies, who we had under contract at a fixed rate. So for example, change order 1 was exactly that. We lined 2,972 linear feet of 10-inch sanitary sewer underneath William Street. We lined 544 feet of 12-inch sanitary sewer underneath William Street. We lined 210 feet of 15-inch sewer and then 564 feet of 24-inch sewer under Cuba Creek Road. Okay, and again, we did that because we found the deficiencies with our in-house people, and we need to fix that, and then we line that. We line that at the current contract rate with InSituForm. Okay, so we line that, we did the work, it's done. We couldn't charge it to the appropriate phase because we didn't have that bid out with DEC QIP number 2. But we were under contract, so we knew the money was good. Okay, so we performed the work. So what we're doing now, and the same thing with the second change order document, same thing, was for an additional 1,756 feet of 18-inch sanitary sewer under William and 913 feet of 21-inch sanitary sewer under William Street. We had unit bid price in our contract for 10, 12, 15, 18, 21, and 24-inch sanitary sewer mains. We paid the per foot price to line based on that current contract. So now what we are trying to do is to clean up the admin side, the paperwork side. Okay, so what happened in 2020? Like I mentioned, we had a global pandemic. Everyone started working remote. The state offices, everyone was gone. So it became cumbersome to try to document and go back and forth and get everything done. At the same time, in that time frame, we lost a grant administrator. She passed away, God bless her soul. We had a second grant administrator resign. We are now on our third grant administrator. So we are now in the process of getting back to closing all the open documentation we have so that we can make sure we get full value on the grants that we were awarded and approved. So this contract, even though it says an increase of $149,000, that's correct. It increases that contract. However, that phase is actually a deduct of $238,000. Okay. And then when we go out and close out the documents for what is called sewer shed 9 and 10, where William Street is located in, then that money is going to get charged against that count to reimburse us for the work we already did at a lower rate. To answer Councilmember Dinwiddie's question, the current bid in that is a higher rate of pay. So it would have cost us more if we waited, and we would have had to dig up William Street, which we did not want to do. So we made the interest in the best of our taxpayers and our traveling public and everyone that utilizes William Street on and off the 90 every day to get to work and get to home. So we wanted to make sure we did the job professionally, effectively, and that's why we did what we did, because the money was in place. It's just contractually, we weren't in place, but our contract was in place with New York State. We just didn't have the bid out at that time yet because we weren't under contract, okay, if that makes sense to you. So it's a long-winded explanation, but I think it's very prudent because, again, even though those resolutions were defeated, I highly recommend you bring them back to life, because if we do not pass those, then we're going to have incomplete document collection to New York State.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you make these resolutions? Did you create these?
I created a paperwork that supports them.
So I think it'd be incredibly useful to the entire board and the public if we had some more of that information, because that was very valuable, what you just presented to us, so thank you. But without having that in there, I mean, look what, some of this is creating. And this is, important work that needed to get done. And, we did do the work, but.
Yeah, you're talking, you got 19 bids. How do you know what's going on with 19 bids? I mean, it seems like we're painting this project with one stroke of the brush.
There's not 19 bids, there's 19 contracts.
19
to our
contracts.
DEC consent order that's valued over $55 million.
Is that
right
the
now.
William Street work?
That's part of it.
So, because I know William Street's a county highway, so we're working on William per DEC?
Our sanitary sewer is under William Street. We own the sanitary sewer.
But I can understand where a lot of confusion is. You got 19 contracts. But it just, I mean, there's not enough information on this. I mean, I'm just reading this black and white, everything you say, I understand, but I think there's not enough information on these resolutions to fully understand it, because we may know what's going on with the project, but I think the general public doesn't fully understand what goes into, they see these numbers, they're going to holy moly, look at all this money here. What is it going for? It's just like when you go to a grocery store, you get an itemized list of everything you purchase. I think we need to start posting our receipts online of everything the town purchases for the people to see, because we are using the taxpayer money.
Again, the change orders were attached to a resolution. It spells out in black and white what the work was for. Okay, so it's there again.
So is that a no? I mean,
what is a no?
Just a simple question.
I have offered any of you council members anytime through emails to call me, to come visit the sites, to come look at what we're doing out there. I sent a nice email out when we did the Mildred Andres project. I had 2 council members show up. Okay, you want to actually see how we spend money? I'll be more than happy to show you. Because constantly we get criticized up there about how we do things. We get the best price of anyone that does what they do. Like I presented back up here at the police building back in May, April, with their design build method. Okay,
I'm
that
pretty
works.
sure that's still not even paid off. We have quite some time for that still, right?
For
We
what?
bonded that police project out.
No, I was talking about when I was presenting in the courtroom. Okay, back in the spring of this year.
Either way, you're not just doing this for myself and the other board members. This is for the public, like Councilmember.
I work for the
Jazinski said.
taxpayers of Chickawaga. That's correct.
Yeah,
Every one of us
same.
that stands for works for the
So
taxpayers. That is
they don't have your cell phone number or your email address necessarily, and I think it's,
the next time
small
you
ask.
respond to my email, Councilmember, will be the first time. I just want that on record. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
fine.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an
Okay.
open door. You guys can come find me anytime. You all know where I am. Okay,
Yeah.
so this project, again, you guys do what you want. I just want you to put all on notice that if you don't approve this stuff, then we could be in risk of losing state funding. Okay, so then don't come back to me or anyone else when we come back here and say, now we have to find additional resources because we didn't basically dot the I and cross the T of the paperwork that the state's expecting.
I think what we really need to do is pass a resolution that we see all the town's expenditures, every receipt posted online. I think it's the taxpayers, everything we buy, anything, any dollar that comes out of this town, I think that the people, the taxpayers deserve to see that. So, yes, the work needs to be done, Mark. We're not questioning the work. But what we're questioning is the dollar amount, because I see almost $150,000. Me as the average taxpayer say, geez, that's a lot of money. What is my $150,000 buying? I get it. You say you get the best price. I don't question that. I just like to see, me as being a taxpayer in this town, I would like to see a little more when you're referring to a resolution. Yes, I would like to see the itemization attached to this resolution. So myself and everybody in this town get a better understanding of what we're spending our dollars on to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, because here we are, we're on the verge of talking about a potential tax increase in this town that to me is just not palatable. So we're looking for solutions to try to figure out ways that we can control costs. Maybe we can't cut costs on certain things. I get it. Sometimes cost of material goes up. I understand that. But we're talking work that was back in 2019. In 2019, I can guarantee things were less expensive than they are in 2024. So my concern is that the way the resolutions are written, there's not enough information. It's very short, and it doesn't give the full picture of what's going on. I'm just thinking as a taxpayer in this town myself, how I would like to see this, because for many, many years prior to me, this is probably the way they've done it. I just think it's only fair for the people of Cheektowaga, and the taxpayers need to see some more itemization. All I see is $149,000+ with, no other further explanation, cost of material, your cost of labor. Those are things that I like to see.
So for example, with a 10-inch sanitary piece of pipe that we line, it was $26 per linear foot to line.
I appreciate that, but
Okay.
the thing is that's the taxpayers aren't seeing that. They're seeing this resolution to Mr.
All that
Thompson's-
information is attached to that resolution.
And not only that, so we talked about, increasing in, $150,000 here, $100,000 there. Who's approving this work to be done? You're just saying, okay, we'll add a change order to it. Who's approving that?
We discussed this
Is
with our chairs at the time back in 2019.
Just want to get to the essential question here. We're pertaining to all four. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I want to know who approved that work. Was it 2 board members that bilaterally approved
Our chairs back in
hundreds of
and
thousands
again,
of dollars?
to your
Is
and
that the
Councilmember
process?
Rakowski's point, Mr. Morton brought up earlier, you guys weren't here in 19. So how would you know what was discussed in 19? We discussed this with our chair in 19. Okay, one of them was Jerry in 19. I forgot who the other one was. I think it might have been, not Linda, I believe, but again, board member's not here. So my point is that was discussed, proper channels at the time. Changers was signed by the department head and Pat Bowen based on a recommendation of what we discussed with our chairs at said time.
Well, and I think, Mark, probably the biggest thing to me, I tell everybody, look at the resolutions. There's one word on the bottom of many, many, many of them, attachments. Sure, it takes time to go through it, but if you don't read it, you're not going to know what's going on. There's bid openings that are open to the public. You or I, my next door neighbor, anybody in this room can come to them. The specifications are also available if you want to see exactly what is being done and what the job consists of. You know, it's like the day I was out on, I think it was Tolson or Mildred, or whatever. It's the same thing. I do a lot of municipal work. It's all by the specifications, period. End of story. It's all drawn out, absolutely rock solid in writing. If it's not on the specs, it's not getting done. And I think that's the biggest thing, you know, and I'm sure anybody that's got a computer has access to all this at this point in time now.
Guess we're all just wasting our time here then. You know, all the information, we're all wasting our time.
You ever looked at the attachment firm?
Never.
I don't see the attachment
Yep.
on this. I don't see it.
It's there. So my only issue, which, look, I get it. You want to see all the receipts, every single receipt that comes through, so be it. I understand that. I'm not saying you're wrong for it. Totally understand that. But my issue I have at hand is there's a whole lot of cherry picking on what departments should be doing what and what shouldn't. We just approved a resolution earlier today for $89,147.64 for a data center. Not a single receipt was asked to be seen, not a single bid, nothing, all that. But then we got Mark Crystal here and we're like, oh, we want to see every single receipt that comes through your department. Same thing has happened with hirings through here. Depending on what department, we're good. We'll just approve the hirings. But
I've actually had,
and I'm not saying it's you. I'm not.
I've seen the breakdown for some of the IT stuff.
And
that's
I'm
come
just saying,
through and
when
I know it was
when
explained
we speak up
properly.
here, it should be all or nothing. It shouldn't be one department has to produce all receipts. One department, I want to interview every single person getting hired there. You're either all in or you're all out on it. All right. So don't speak out of both sides of your mouth on it saying, hey, I'm not hiring because I didn't get to interview, and then don't show up to interviews either. These are issues here. If you're going to say something, go through with it. If you want to see every single receipt and every single bid, the bids are always attached for the record, and we're allowed to show up to them. But if you want to see every receipt, just don't make it Mark Crystal because you got it out from Mark Crystal.
Are you insinuating that we have it out for Mark?
Oh, no, I'm not saying we. I'm saying absolutely you do.
I
Yeah,
think that's an insinuation.
Going back to the essential question here.
It's funny, huh,
Yeah.
Mark?
Going back to the essential question on
Hey,
this
somebody's
entire
got to call
discussion.
you out, right? As a
Hey.
fiduciary of this town,
I
somebody's
got
gotta-
big shoulders. I stand by
gotta hold your feet to the fire.
everything that I have done and the men behind me have done and everything we have done.
And we're
since
not
day
talking
one I've
about
been
your
here.
men, Mark. You're
I'm
at the
talking,
podium.
I am, because they're part of me. Okay, so everything we have done as a group, I stand by every decision that has been made for the betterment of our taxpayers, period.
So let me ask you this. Why do you find?
Council member, everyone here has had a chance to speak. I have not had a chance to speak. I have a question
I'd like to
ask.
finish my
So
conversation.
going back to my question, the essential question pertaining to this resolution, 648, 649, 650, is we're talking about change orders to the tune of $149,555.80. Mr. Bowen has said 2 different times that the debit here of $149,555.80 is going to be covered with a credit to the same amount in the future on a future phase of the lining project. And you had said the same thing. Am I putting words in your mouth? Do you agree with what I'm saying? That the net cost of this is going to be zero, arguably less, because we saved money on labor by doing this sooner rather than later? Are we achieving a net real savings by
We
doing
are
this?
saving a net real savings of $208,000 and some change, a net real saving. So change order 1, change order 2, get pulled out,
Okay.
build to a different contract. Okay, change order 3 stays in there because that was for a shed that is covered by EFC. Okay, that gives us a net savings of $208,000. Okay, but we have to close out that contract first. So once we close out that contract, then we can do subsequent paperwork that'll show the dollars being moved to the other contract. Okay.
And one last question. You mentioned the EFC and the need for paperwork and getting all of that documented. What happens if we don't pass these tonight, in regards to getting that paperwork together and dealing with the EFC in the next few weeks? I'm not asking 6 months, 9 months down the
No,
road. What could happen? What is going to happen?
We would be at risk of losing the funding because they would deem this as an incomplete.
The question, if I would. So this money that is being refunded to us, maybe our director of finance can respond to that. Is that something we've accounted for all of these projects where we are getting grant money coming back in? Is that a part of our, yeah?
Yes, it's part of our EFC project plan.
Any other council member questions or comments on this?
Okay.
All right. Considering the net effect of these change orders would be a savings to the town and we don't have to dig up roads. I'm in support of the item. If necessary, I'll put my name on it as a sponsor, and I'd like a roll call vote on it.
Five, five.
Councilmember 655.
Are we changing sponsor, Councilmember Thompson?
You can keep me on there. You can keep me on there.
What? Okay. So resolution 2024-655, Councilmember Kaminsky is a sponsor, second by Councilmember Thompson. The contract for cleaning, televising, and lining of sanitary sewer through cured in place pipe for Phase 5 sewer shed number 6, that's bid 2019-8, was awarded to In Situ Form Technologies LLC by the Town Board by resolution dated April 9th, 2019. The project has been completed at an addition of $149,555.80 to the original contract price. This town board accepts the completed project and directs the supervisor to execute the final acceptance documents.
On the question?
Call
Oh,
for a
sorry,
roll
the
call.
Roll call, sorry.
Councilmember Bukowski? Councilmember Jazinski?
No.
Member Kaminsky? Councilmember Pilarski?
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson?
Yes.
Supervisor Nowak?
Yes.
President, I would ask that the board reconsider resolution 648, 649, and 650, the change orders.
I'll reintroduce
And
those
the
during
additional-
suspension of
Yep,
rules.
I have it in my notes to reintroduce. Thank you.
Resolution 2024-663 is sponsored by Councilmember Bukowski, seconded by Councilmember Pilarski. During the holiday season, the town of Cheektowaga traditionally attaches decorations to the electrical poles throughout town. The supervisor being and hereby is authorized and directed to execute an agreement with National Grid.
On the question? All in favor? Oh, I'm
Quick
sorry.
question.
Councilmember Thompson, the floor is yours.
Clarify on, we talked about earlier, the lighting project and us owning the, streetlights throughout the town. So did I miss something here to where they are still National Grid? Is it because it doesn't take effect?
That's a good question, Councilmember. You may remember earlier in the year that we took ownership of the NYSEG lights. We are, and correct me, Mr. Bowen, if I'm wrong, but we are very close to taking ownership of National Grid. We're just at the point of executing the agreement right this moment, correct?
That is correct. In the case of Harlem Road, that light, I believe, is in the NYSEG territory. And it's on wood poles. All the wood poles belong to the utility. So we purchased the street light in the arm, but the pole still belongs to the utility.
For NYSEG and National Grid?
Yes.
Somebody damages one of the poles, we are responsible for the pole?
No, the wood poles, again, they're owned by the utility. So if somebody hits it and knocks it over, then it's up to the utility to go and replace the pole and then seek reimbursement from whoever knocked it down in the accident.
As utility, he means like cable, because there's multiple utilities on there. There's phone, cable,
Right.
and all that. So that's why we don't get the wood poles.
I just want to clarify because it was said last week that if somebody were to knock into one of the poles, that we would be responsible for that.
That's for the street ones with the arches on them, yes, with the
Right.
LED lights, but not the wood ones because they also house utility wires on them.
Council members? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
-665 is sponsored by Supervisor Noack, seconded by Councilmember Kaminsky. Town of Cheektowaga and the Town of Cheektowaga Supervisory Unit, or the TCSU, desire to modify their January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2024 collective bargaining agreement. The town supervisor being hereby is authorized and directed to execute the memorandum of understanding between the Town of Cheektowaga and the Town of Cheektowaga Supervisory Unit.
On the question, I'd like to speak briefly on this. I've been on the board for nearly 7 years now, and I've been in the supervisor's position for just under 10 months. In my time on the board, we have had labor negotiation discussions with 3 of the 5 bargaining units. And that's because the PBA and the Captains and Lieutenants Association achieved contracts in 2023. When I was a council member, the negotiation process with those 2 contracts was to have the Labor Negotiations Committee work with the leadership of the bargaining unit, come to an agreement, take that agreement before the town board, vet it, put it up for a vote, and then from there, we get ourselves a contract. And of course, there's some more steps in that process, including the bargaining unit themselves ratifying on their end. With the dispatchers, we did that at the last meeting, and they went through the same process the captains and lieutenants did, where we had meetings, they had some terms, the town had some terms, and we found agreement. We took that proposal back to the board. It was reviewed and discussed, and then it was brought before the regular meeting after the dispatchers ratified on their end, and it was ratified by the town board. The Town of Cheektowaga Supervisor Unit underwent much the same process as all these other groups, to where the Labor Negotiations Unit met with leadership of the bargaining unit. There was requests from management, requests from the workers, discussions. We reached an MOU that was presented to board members for their review and input. There was discussions on that following, and there was also ratification by the members of the TCSU. And now we're at the stage with this contract, as we were with the PBA and the captains and the dispatchers, to where the town board has this before them to consider for passage. Procedurally speaking, we've taken the steps necessary to bring this up for a vote. And that in the discussions with that unit, we have some givebacks from the workers. And there's, of course, things that management through this agreement would be proposing to give to the union, including pay raises and some other conditions. I think considering the labor market right now, and if you look in other towns and other cities across New York State, this is a very reasonable contract compared to similar unions, whether they're blue collar or management on the blue collar side, in terms of percentages and some of these other details. For that reason, I'm in support of this. It's the reason I'm the sponsor on the item, and that I've said my piece on it. Any other council members?
I'd like to comment. This contract with this union ends in December. We have a contract, we have a union of workers that are without a contract since January. I think this needs to be put on hold, and let's concentrate on working on resolving and getting a contract for the TCEA.
I agree with you, council member. We need to take care of our labor's union first, and I make a motion to table this.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second? Oh, you absolutely can. The item's tabled.
Resolution 665 is tabled. That is the end of our separate resolution items. We do have a couple other items that came in late, so I need a motion and a second to waive the rules to include resolution items 2024-676 and 677. Do I have a motion? I'll second. Kowski. All in favor?
Aye.
76 is sponsored by Councilmember Pilarski, seconded by Supervisor Noah. On December 12th, 2023, the Town of Cheektowaga entered an SaaS service agreement with Just Appraised Inc. to provide professional services for the period of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. The supervisor hereby is directed to direct the town attorney to draft written notice and deliver said notice no later than November 1st, 2024 via certified mail return receipt requested to Just Appraise Inc., notifying them that the town is exercising its right under the SAAS services agreement to terminate said agreement. There was an amendment at the work session that was changed from 30 days to 60 days and changed from December to November.
On the question? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries.
Resolution 2024-677, sponsored by Councilmember Bukowski, seconded by Councilmember Pilarski. Kyle Spencer was appointed to the position of cleaner in the Facilities Department, Building and Grounds Division, effective October 9th, 2024. Said appointment needs to be amended. Kyle Spencer of Chickawaga, New York, being and hereby is appointed to the position of cleaner in the Facilities Department, Parks Division, effective October 9th, 2024.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. With that,
Supervisor, I make a motion to reintroduce resolution 648, 649, and 650.
and I second that.
Sorry, gentlemen, you can't do that. The motion to reconsider has to come from somebody who voted no.
Supervisor, I challenge somebody who voted no to reintroduce.
We had a resolution that passed 655, 5-1. That would leave two council members with the power to reintroduce 648, 649, and 650. All three resolutions of which go logically consistent with those items.
I hear no confirmation of that. I'm going to say that there is no reconsideration of 648, 649, or 650 from Councilmember Bukowski, Jazinski, or Thompson. Yes? Okay. Moving on to communications, departmental communications include Supervisor Statement of Funds of August 2024, minutes from the Conservation Advisory Council of October 2nd, 2024, and minutes of the Veterans Affairs Committee of October 2nd, 2024. General communications includes notice of summons and complaint, in which there were 2, and 2 notices of claim.
That gets us to supervisors' comments. Just a few updates of what's been going on between meetings. We had 2 days of budget hearings last week. We took about 7 hours on Thursday, and I believe it was closer to 6 on Friday to hear from various department heads, advocating for their departments, getting into some details on the budgets and explaining why we are doing the things that we're doing, and why their budgets look the way they do and why they're advocating for what they are. I think that was pretty fruitful. I know in some scenarios, it took a lot of time to get through small dollar amounts. In other areas, we covered large dollar amounts pretty quickly. But I think we devoted considerable time to going through this budget in a public and detailed way. I'm really happy with that. And I got to say, it's something that in the future, I think we can review what we did this year, refine that, and maybe do this in a way next year where it's productive for the public, useful for the department heads, and for the board members as well. Next up on my list here, paving. We have 2 streets left for the season. Shanley, I was out there on my lunch hour today, checking all that out. They've got to get the base on the road there and then top that off, and that'll be finished up. The only end of the road, as far as I understand, and Rick, you're out there, so correct me if I'm wrong, is Indian Road. Shanley and Indian is it, right? So those are the last 2 streets on our paving season. After that, we're going to be getting into leaf pickup. Throughout the year, I've held a handful of town hall meetings. It's an opportunity for members of the public to come out, see me in a high school auditorium or a fire hall or wherever I can be found, and have some back and forth discussion. You know, our town hall meetings don't always afford that to the degree some folks like. I know a handful of folks in the audience have been to one or more of those in the course of the year. I'm doing another one, and it's going to be on a weekend morning. We're looking at November 16th, the Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. And we've got the high school auditorium in the Cleveland Hills School District. So we're getting that out on social media. We're going to get press releases out, hopefully get more recognition of that before that meeting. I'd invite all of you to show up. We're going to be on the other side of a budget vote. And whether it's the budget or any other issues that may be on your mind, feel free to come out and we'll have a discussion. Next point on my list is the lighting project. It's come up on a few occasions about our cost relative to other municipalities. I just want to reiterate, it's not an apples to apples thing in all cases. In the case of the town of Cheektowaga, we purchased the infrastructure from NYSEG and National Grid, which means the considerable amount of money we spent in rent or lease type fees from the utilities are wiped off our balance sheet. Other municipalities simply worked with the electric companies to facilitate a switch to the lighting standards. And their approach, they didn't buy the infrastructure. They're bound to those future payments. So for the next 10 years, in our case, we've switched from those fees to the utility companies to debt payments. After year 10, those debt payments are gone. In some other cases, when they get to year 10 or 11 along our timeline, they're still going to be paying those lease or rental fees to NYSEG or National Grid if they happen to be in their municipalities. So it's when we make those comparisons, just got to make sure they're apples to apples. Next up, an update on Vets Park at Nob Hill. I'm told we're going to be breaking ground this week. We're going to be getting the bulldozer on the property, and they're going to start digging for sidewalks and leveling off a portion of that property for the monuments. Item 5 on my list, speaking of veterans, on Monday, November 11th, Veterans Day, 11:30 a.m. in Town Park, we're going to have the annual Veterans Day ceremony. There's going to be a 1 p.m. at the Donovan Post. I'll leave that to the other council members if they want to add more details regarding that. The credit rating for the town. Nearing my first year in office, we've maintained the credit rating I inherited. I want to thank Brian Kraus for his guidance and the things he's done and shown me over the past year, and to do the best we can considering budget pressures that we've had. The solar farm situation, we had a petition here. Well, there are 2 different petitions, but over 50 signatures from residents tonight. I appreciate that being delivered to myself and the rest of the board. I'm willing to look more into that project and see what we can do to alleviate concerns from some of those residents. I do think it is a good opportunity for the town, but I also think that there are records that this board should take a look at from folks like Councilmember Thomas Johnson and others that we can get a little further educated on exactly what that property is and what we're doing in terms of potentially disturbing that. I do want to say as a piece of that, the way the solar project was set up, it was going to lay on top of the landfill. We wouldn't be penetrating the cap or causing any problems like that. So I know there's some concerns on the environmental side. It's my personal opinion that we've alleviated those big concerns at least. That's 7, and I think that's basically all I've got. I do want to finish on a point about the labor contracts. Quite frankly, I'm proud of the agreement we reached with the TCSU. It's disappointing we couldn't get that done tonight. That's my view. I understand other people have a different opinion. In my mind, I think we can run all 5 of our contracts in tandem. I've told a number of folks that care to listen that it's my philosophy that we do the best we can as a town to make sure that no bargaining group is out of contract, and we are nearly there. There is some work to do with the TCEA. We're in a mediation with them. The most recent meeting was canceled on their side of the aisle, and I don't begrudge them for that at all. We're going to have opportunity to keep working on that, but I think we can work on the TCEA's contract as we get the folks in TCSU set up for an agreement for the future. And once we have all that settled, possibly even sooner. I don't mind entertaining discussions with the dispatchers before their contract expires. And I certainly hope we can begin the conversations with the PBA and the Captains and Lieutenants Association before their contracts expire. And I understand there's some time in the TCSU contract left, but it's only 2 months. We're nearly at the expiration point. Do we have some time? Yes. I just hope we take this up at the next meeting and we get that, we get the concerns we have clearly put on the table and honestly put on the table, and we deal with the contract accordingly. That's all I've got. Councilmember Pilarski? I'm sorry, and
Like the supervisor said, November 11th, 11:30, Town Park, 1 o'clock, Donovan Post, 2 Veterans Day events here in town. And the wreaths across America, to keep that on your radars, December 14th. Saturday, December 14th, I think. That's Saturday. It could be the 12th, but I'll check. But December 14th, welcome everybody. Hopefully we have great weather. Last year was great weather for wreaths across America. Last year for Veterans Day, it was not good weather. So we're going to hope for both. So please join us.
All right, Councilmember Bukowski or, Councilmember Jazinski?
Yes, I'd like to just talk a little bit about what happened tonight. Unfortunately, we didn't talk about some areas where we could do some potential cutting to the budget. I think there's areas because, as it's been said by some of the people who came to the podium, there is room in the budget. It's just where we move the funding around. I can perfectly understand with the cost of living going up, gasoline, groceries, all that going up, that, the salaries aren't keeping pace with inflation and such. So, but what's going to happen is now we're going to potentially have a tax increase. So what that's going to do, it's going to eat some of, if not all or more of your pay raise. So I think that we need to get our ducks in line. I think a comptroller is desperately needed in this town. It's been long overdue. I think there's a lot of waste that we could definitely take care of and make sure that we're spending our money wisely for the taxpayers. And I do appreciate that Mr. Crystal's behind his guys. I appreciate that. But I'm behind the taxpayers of the people of Cheektowaga who pay my salary. So I'm behind the people of the town, and it's my fiduciary duty to watch every dollar and ask the tough questions and make sure that, people get fully understanding, because people watching this meeting tonight, I'm sure some of them were confused on some of the language and some of the spreadsheets and stuff like that. So I just think that it's important. I hope we can come to a conclusion where we can end up, we don't want to be another Amherst where, they're over 11%. What that equates to, people foreclosing on their houses, more seniors. I'd like to see the full senior tax exemption come back. I mean, here we are handing raises out to people, but we can't give the seniors what's legally theirs by the state of New York. So I'm just hoping we could find some room in this budget moving forward, so the people of Cheektowaga will not have to take on any more burden of taxes.
Councilmember Bukowski, did you want to go next? Councilmember Thompson, then we'll go over to Mr.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yep. Down the line? Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. No, probably the only thing I wanted to bring up tonight, has nothing to do with me personally, my business or whatever. Does anybody in this room honestly believe that the inflation rate for the last year is 2%? Show me hands. How many people believe that's true? Nobody? As opposed to the disaster we're dealing with right now. My best guesstimate is somewhere between 15 and 18%, not looking at national averages. I've seen prices, even with products that I deal with, that are over the 50, 60, 70% mark in the last 18 months. And I think the biggest thing you've got to understand, and I think Dan had brought it up, about our reserves. We've got everything from a highway reserve, lighting, sewer department, I mean, you name it. And those reserve funds, we can only use for those purposes. We can't take reserves from the sewer and use it in highway or vice versa. It's pretty much restricted by the state of New York. And I think the sad part about it, if anybody is really, really, really honest about this, what does everybody want to cut next year? How many programs do you want to cut? Give me a list. Anybody?
Anything you do not need to physically run this town. If you can't figure that out, you should not be a board member.
Oh, thank you, thank you. You should be up here then, I guess. You know, how are you gonna explain that to the family and the kids?
Gary, when it comes down to, time and money, okay, we all don't have a lot of time, and we all don't have a lot of money, and you guys keep spending it like we got all the time in the world, so we'll just bond it out, and we got all the money in the world, if we don't, we gotta do is bond it.
Well, let me ask you a question. I don't want to get in a discussion with the audience. I would assume when you bought your house, you paid cash for it, correct?
My first house, no,
Why not?
You probably don't buy, 5 houses a year.
no, I don't.
What is the difference between that and bonding expenses?
When I paid cash,
Mm-hmm.
But you are getting into a discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we stay on track and keep it going?
But it's, like I said, look around at some of the other towns, the villages, everything else. Nobody is exempt from the inflation in my book. Whether it's gonna get good or bad after the next 2 weeks, I do not have a clue, not at this point in time. But all I know is myself personally, I'm prepared for the worst. And it's like I said, I think next year is probably gonna be a lot worse than this year, mainly because our reserves are dwindling and we won't have them to use.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Thompson, you're next down the line.
Inflation obviously is a real thing. You don't have to explain that to anybody, but when it comes to, think about the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and everything just keeps going up in the town, and taxes are comparable to, Lancaster, Orchard Park, and you have double the plot of land that you have. Yes, you can say we have one of the biggest police forces. I'm fine with that. They deserve that. We owe them everything to protect and, look over, one of our first ring suburbs. So I have no complaints about that. But when you look at the spending where you don't even bat an eye and you say the average home is $155,000. Does anybody in this audience believe that? Probably not. So to say that we're just going to spend, $100,000 here, $100,000 there, that's not sustainable. You can't just keep doing that every single month and year and expect everything to be fine. It's not how life works. So you need to think about, I'm one person. Everybody on this board is an individual person, but you need to think about, the direction that you want. You want a responsible board to think about your money that's being spent. I don't care if I'm not liked. It doesn't matter. I'm up here to do a job and to ask questions that are the hard questions that people don't want to ask. Yes, I want to know why you spent this much money on that. And talking about $150,000 and you send an email, pick up the phone. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Call me. Call somebody. Is that funny?
He said you don't answer.
I don't answer. Who said that? Yeah, pick up the phone. Call me.
He answers every time I call him.
Yeah. Well, not always. Sorry.
Yeah, within 24 hours. Okay.
But regardless, I mean, I like to think everybody has the best interest on this board and everybody gets their own ways. We always say that, but it's something to think about when we're looking at this budget time and we're just hit with blanket numbers and, we ask questions to say, well, where is this money coming from and where is that money going? And you're not really giving a defined answer. And it is a lot for Brian Kraus to do. And I applaud the job that he does. It's a very hard job. He does great at that. And that's why, a week ago we talked about adding a controller. And I think it's important to find money in our budget to do that because it will produce a cost savings down the road. What's that? Sure.
Why not put control?
Yeah. So just something to think about. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while now, and to go back to the contract negotiations. So, I think we should, and again, I've been here for 10 months. I don't know what's gone on in labor negotiations for all these other departments other unions, but to have a contract or without a contract for this long for, your first ring workers, and then every other contract just flies by, and especially their supervisors, and it's not even up yet. I think that's something that should be, talked about.
I think you made a good point, Vernon. We also had a resolution to maybe change up the negotiation team because it seems like it's always yielding the same result.
And that's a good point, Councilmember. So right now you have obviously a split board, three Republicans, 3 Democrat. You say it's not political, but nobody believes that. So you have Supervisor Nowak and Jerry Kaminsky on the negotiating committee. I've asked to be on that committee, and they said they went on based on experience. Okay, well, how's the next person going to learn how to be involved in those conversations and even know what's going on behind closed doors in those negotiations, to even know what is talked about? Because I'm sure not everything is translated over to the rest of the board, and that's not, a malfeasance. It's just you lose context when you're not there, sitting there, observing and having those conversations. And maybe that's to the point why the TCA is so frustrated, and they have law firms that are involved now, and it's become a big to-do. Maybe that's why, because they become frustrated with this, people that they're dealing with. It should be nonpartisan. It should be, I should be able to be involved, or Barb should be able to be involved.
I agree. We probably could balance the budget with just the attorney fees alone.
So sorry to go on and on, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
I'm just going to end it with November 5th is around the corner. We won't have our next town board meeting till the 12th. So November 5th is a big day. Go and vote. Vote who you think is going to do a good job for you. With that, everybody have a good night.
Advisor, one comment. On a lighter note, the town did pass one resolution tonight that Thursday, October 31st is designated as Halloween night in the town of Cheektowaga, and trick-or-treating times will be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Period. Our final for the evening. The first person on our list is Natasha Snyder.
Thank you. I am here to follow up on my email that I sent to you, Town Supervisor Nowak, and the board members on October 17th. So I just wanted to appear to continue to encourage you to fund all the town park pools. As our previous speaker earlier this evening said, they are an important part of our community. They are an outdoor resource that's very important. Particularly as our summers keep getting hotter and hotter. I've been a long-term proponent of the pools and fully support that. Secondly, I would encourage the town also to explore the possibility of a cricket court or field. I'm not too clear on cricket, but there's a large group of men that use the town park tennis courts. So clearly there's an emerging need for that recreational activity with a new apparent social activity. I want to close by saying thank you so much, all of you, for your time, and all of the various town employees behind me. Your passion for the town is very evident, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. And I just want to say I did receive your email, and I can get your reply there. So thank you. Next up is Stephen Nowicki.
It should come as no surprise, It should come as no surprise that between this meeting and last, Councilmember Jasinski has decided to disrespect the other members of this town board. Your conduct during and surrounding the town budget meeting, while expected, is utterly disgraceful. Time and time again, just like in that meeting, you claim to have all these great ideas to make the town a better place. You've never once elaborated on any policies to make change for the better. You're all ideas and no substance. It would be comical if it wasn't so sad the way you conduct yourself in these meetings. If this meeting room were one of my job sites and I had one worker continually bully and berate another, they would have been thrown off long ago. It's my turn to speak. You have no excuse to disrespect the members of this board and in turn the members of this room, time and time again. The absolute disrespect in which you treat other members of this board is vile. You carry yourself as this grandiose intellectual giant who knows better and sees all compared to your fellow board members. You never follow up on the issues you claim to know better on, not at least in any meaningful way outside of overdone platitudes. In the same breath you speak, asking for respect from other members, you make any effort possible to jab or demean those who disagree with you. I don't see a man when I look in your chair. I see an overgrown bully without a modicum of respect for their fellow man or woman. I have to believe there isn't a single mirror in your house, because if I stood in your shoes, I'd never be able to look myself in the eye. You embody everything wrong with small town politics, and the only policy platform you stand on is to hurt those around you. You choose to be vindictive for vindictiveness' sake. I stand up here not to speak just for myself, but to speak for all those who wish to see you held accountable, whether that's those who work for the town or those who do not see themselves as someone who can take the microphone at this meeting. I'll say again, as I believe I've said before, if you change your actions so that you work for the town instead of against it, I'll have no reason to speak against you. Until that day occurs, or until you are off this board, I will be sure to hold you accountable to every poor action you take. And may I say, if you're not man enough to speak up to me now, please don't feel the need to come up to me after the meeting's over. I prefer when you threaten my job, the cameras are still recording. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Diane Benchkowski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm kind of lost for words right now after Stephen Nowicki talked. I don't know where he has been the last 10 years since I've sat on that board, but apparently he didn't see what I had to go through with people like you, Brian Nowak, and Jerry Kaminsky and Brian Pilarski bullying me. In fact, one of the reasons we didn't have a TCA contract sooner from the last contract was because without me knowing, I get an email, copied on an email from you to our attorney who was handling the contract negotiations, firing them without even consulting with me. You got your coup together and fired the attorney without telling me that. And they were the ones that were very close to a contract. So then we had to start with square one and talk about bullying and being an obstructionist and not letting me do my job as a supervisor. I hope you're not dealing with that, because that was a horrible time. However, I'm here today, and you know, I think everybody should have their opinion, and there's nothing wrong with Michael and Vern and all of you not always agreeing, because that's how it was when I was on the board. So quickly, I want to thank the town attorney, the new town attorney, for being the wonderful parliamentarian that you are about calling about the reconsideration. I really could have used somebody like that, because I didn't have that either. So thank you for that. And I want to remind the board that in West Seneca, 5 years in a row, had a zero tax levy increase, and they're facing the same challenges that we are with inflation. So why can't we do that? We have to start thinking outside of the box, start consolidating things, departments, use of equipment. There's nothing saying we can't do that. Just because there's equipment in the highway doesn't mean that the parks can't use it, or vice versa. There's just so many other ways you have to be thinking in order to cut that amount of time or the amount of money and the increases. Also, I do agree with the questioning about that paving list. There are roads on that paving list that have not been paved, but yet you wanted to pass that resolution tonight for that dollar amount, but the list is incorrect. In fact, there are several streets on that list: Gary, Benz, Bobby, Duvernay, Armand,
And has Raymond even been done? It seems like Raymond comes up like every year to be done, and I think I passed by that several times. It wasn't done yet. So I think you got to really make sure your minutes tell a story. I took a ton of continuing education, and the controller's office, the last one I had taken, they said, and they come in and audit you, your minutes have to tell the story. So Vern brought up that point. They have to be more explicit in explaining the situation, why you're passing that, and then there's going to be a credit down. I didn't understand that with my 10 years of experience, but you have to do that, because when they come in, they're going to question that stuff. And like I said, a lot of that, your warrant, there's no resolution following our procurement policy stating how you went about purchasing that service or even that equipment. So with that being said, I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you for keeping that public hearing open for the budget in case some other residents have some ideas to run by you, and hopefully you can find ways to cut and be fair to all the residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Next on our list is Ted Morton.
Thank you. Just continuing on a little bit what Diane said with kind of blasting some of you over partly crocodile tears. I always hear about the costs and all that stuff. And of course, Jerry, what, you've been here 12 years now, 12, 13 years, whatever, saying to us out here, if you can show me something, show me something. Well, you know what? The elephant in the room is sanitation. Sanitation is, our costs are $5 to $6 million every year more than they need to, based on 90% of Erie County. At the end of the last board meeting, Councilman Jasinski and I spoke, and I brought it up to him again. And I said about, why haven't you done an RFP, at the very least, some leverage with the negotiations? Your comment was, I'll get it done. I didn't see one today. I challenge you and at least one other person to second it, to put out an RFP next board meeting and get it approved, so that you people can find out the true cost of what sanitation should be in this town. You've got a 40-person department holding hostage the town for at least $5 million a year extra. You know, when sanitation and recycling pick up on my street, and I'm sure everyone in Cheektowaga sees this, the recycling guy, one person in a truck, never gets out. And you know what? Private sector, I'm sure he works 8 hours a day. Then I see our people, 3 people per truck. And what are they, 4 hours, 5 hours a day on the road? The cost structure is an obscenity. So you're either going to sit up there like has happened for 20 or 30 years. And when I ran 12 years ago, if something had been done, okay, $60 million less would have been spent in today's dollars. I don't know what the debt level is in Cheektowaga. I think it's 60 or 70 million. But that's a hell of a coincidence when you are overpaying on purpose. You all know it. So please don't ever again, if you don't do something about it now while this contract is out, if you don't do something about it, don't ever complain to the public. Our hands are tied. We can't do anything. What Supervisor Benson-Kowski said was so accurate. Wes Seneca, a conservative leader for 5 straight years, no tax increase. 5 straight years in the same community. Where there's a will, there's a way. You folks have proven, and I've lived in this town 43 years. Almost every board member has proven they don't have the will to do what's right for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Last speaker on the list tonight is Mark Crystal.
Thank you, honorable board members. Just want to real quick introduce myself. Most of you know me anyways, but for those that don't in the cyber world that's watching, my name is Mark Crystal. I am the Principal Engineering Assistant General Foreman, and I am also the president of the Town of Cheektowaga Supervisory Unit, otherwise known as the TCSU. Our membership is currently 20 members with 2 vacancies, and we represent departments such as engineering, sewer maintenance, main pump station, highway, central garage, parks, building and grounds, and sanitation. Most of our gentlemen that are currently employed in this union began their careers as entry level and worked our way up on merit. Okay, we have an average year experience of 25 years per member in our group that have been with this town for that period of time. Our members were selected based on our skill set, our leadership skills, and our basically recommendations of existing supervisors at the time that recommended us for these positions that we are in. The TCSU, we work for the Cheektowaga taxpayers, okay? We have no affiliation with anyone. We remain neutral. That's by design because we are department heads in some capacity. So I don't think the town taxpayers want their department heads aligned one way or another. Councilmember Thompson mentioned before, it's pretty clear the board is split 3-3. Another reason why I think it's imperative that we remain neutral for that reason alone, so that we can, again, be as transparent as we possibly can be for what we're doing for our taxpayers. We make every decision based on facts, and decisions that are made in the best interest of the town and what is best for the taxpayer. There is no agenda with us. There is no ulterior motive with us. We do what we have to do based on the needs of the community. We supervise a large portion of the TCA that was mentioned a lot today, their contract, and numerous contractors and vendors. Yes, there's a lot of dollars that go through our department, our guys, our men. Okay, we try to be as transparent as we possibly can with what we do, how we purchase, and what we're doing that for. We are entrusted to make sure that all work is for the taxpayer and is done correctly and cost effective. That's basically the definition of what a supervisor is. Okay, we're to make sure the job is done to the specs, to the qualifications, everything's expected of that, make sure the manpower is out there, that is taken care of, working safely, and that the job is done correctly, again, for the best interest of our taxpayers. That being said, we basically negotiated in good faith. Again, it was mentioned up here about the negotiating committee. We don't pick the committee. We can pick our committee. We didn't pick the fact that Councilmember Kaminsky, Supervisor Nowak, and Brian Carlson are on the committee. We negotiated in good faith. Every meeting that was held, we showed up. We didn't cancel meetings like the TCA has done. Okay, they could have had a contract that they wanted to. They chose not to. Okay, that's their choice. That's their decision, not mine. I'm not part of you. That's their management decision, and they have to answer for that. We showed up to every meeting that was called. We negotiated in good faith. Cost savings for the town. It was mentioned on Brian's presentation. We gave up a job at a cost savings. One of the only deducts in the budget was $80,000. That came from us, from the TCSU. We agreed to give up a position for the needs of our taxpayers, and we take on more roles, more duties, more responsibilities. Obviously, the position of Deputy Highway Superintendent was debated at length there last year. The job was ultimately defunded and no longer exists. Yes, the job exists for zero pay, so you're not going to get anyone. So we agreed to take on those duties. Why? In the interest of our taxpayers, to do what is right for the community, to make sure during weather events, storm events, whatever it may be, that we are on the ground and making sure we can take care of whatever the needs come our way. So as far as I know, I've been here almost 30 years. In the history of open negotiations that were done in good faith, there's never been a time where a contract has come to the board that has not been ratified. It's never been tabled, never been voted down. Every contract that has come to the board has been approved. This is the first time, so we're setting a bad precedence. It's disrespectful to all the men behind me for what we do, for what we stand for the taxpayers of this community. Again, the captains and lieutenants and PBA were mentioned. Good for them. They negotiated last year at this time, and they were approved while they were still under contract, just like we are. We have basically 4 board meetings left until the end of the year when our contract expires. So again, it's not unprecedented what we're trying to accomplish. It was brought to us. We came down, we sat in good faith and negotiated what we thought was a fair deal, an equitable deal for, again, the taxpayers. Briefing pay was brought up.
That's 3 minutes. Do we get a motion to extend?
Make a motion to extend this time to as long as he needs. Is there a second?
Same.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So briefing bay was brought up again today. Yes, that's additional cost. However, that comes at an overtime savings. We do not double dip. Okay, so we are going to be there. So we are going to work a longer shift than others. We are going to work half an hour longer than other salaried or hourly employees do. And we are going to be compensated for that, but not through overtime. So if we're there, we're not going to double dip. Okay, we're going to work an 8.5 hour day. We're going to get paid for 8.5. That's it, not overtime. Okay, so again, yes, there's additional monies there, but there's also a savings. So once again, I'm disappointed it wasn't approved tonight. I hope that everyone reveals what their concerns are with their contract. I'm open at any time for any calls, meetings, whatever it may be to get this done. Once again, we're here for our taxpayers and whatever we need to do. And there was concessions on our part, and now other bargaining units can say that. Okay, we're not standing here saying we want. We recognize that and we gave as well. Okay, so on that, I appreciate everyone's time. I hope everyone reconsiders 2 weeks from now and we can get this deal done. Thank you.
That, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second from Kowski, all in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.